We'd like to welcome you to our current event and Bible study for April 9th, 2017. And today, primarily, we're going to be concentrating on the Syrian crisis and all of the factors that go into that. I've taken a lot of time since this all happened to try to get you the most comprehensive look that I can give you at this particular situation so you can understand all of the deception that is going on surrounding this, and to try to weed through all the garbage the mainstream media is putting out there. Now, if you're not familiar with what we're talking about, I'll just give you a brief overview. And this was a report that just came out in the last couple of days. Kremlin tells the U.S. it's one step from war, as Trump warns he will hit Syria again after his attack on Russia's ally Assad triggers fears of World War III. And this is what we're really talking about here. What is the potential for this event to get us into World War III? And as I've said before, World War III, not even, I mean, from a biblical standpoint and also from a Illuminati predictive programming standpoint, is the linchpin for us going into the tribulation. So this really is a big deal, what we're talking about here. I don't see any greater linchpin than probably what's going on in Syria right now regarding that whole matter. Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev denounced Donald Trump in his first direct raid on Bashar al-Assad's forces. U.S. President authorized the firing of 59 cruise missiles at a military airfield in Syria. The official said it was in retaliation for Assad's use of chemical weapons, and we're going to be looking at that in depth. The U.S. ambassador to the UN said, "We are prepared to do more, but we hope that it will not be necessary." Now Vladimir Putin has diverted the warship, the Admiral Grigorovich, to protect the Syrian coast. So we've got all of this escalation, all of this ramping up on both sides of this issue. Syrian aircraft took off from al-Sharat airfield on Friday in an apparent act of defiance, and that was the airfield that got bombed. Of course, from what I understand, these cruise missiles didn't really do any damage to the runway at all. The Kremlin has warned that the U.S. is one step away from war over Syria, but the Trump administration hit back by saying it would be prepared to carry out airstrikes again. So we've got a lot of very, very bad potential things on the horizon here. Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev denounced the U.S. for attacking the legitimate government of Syria and for allegedly breaking international law without the approval of the UN. Mr. Medvedev also said this military action is a clear indication of the U.S. president's extreme dependency on the views of the Washington establishment, the one that the new president strongly criticized in his inauguration speech. He's making a lot of very good points here. The people that Trump has got around him, particularly as of late and increasingly, are some of the worst people he could possibly put around him. And we're going to be looking at that today. I'm not just saying that lightly. We're going to be looking at that in depth, so you'll understand why I'm saying this. Soon after his victory, I noted that everything would depend on how soon Trump's election promises would be broken by the existing power machine. And what he really meant to say is by the pressure of the existing power machine put upon Trump. It took only 2.5 months, is what he's saying. The last remaining election fog has lifted. Instead of an overworked statement about a joint fight against the biggest enemy, ISIS, the Trump administration proved that it will fiercely fight the legitimate Syrian government, who is actually fighting ISIS. This is going to be a study that a lot of revelations are put out there if you're not familiar with what is going on. And we're going to be taking an in-depth look at Trump, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and the things that are going on and the things that are surrounding him. So I said from the very get-go with Trump, I said, you know, he may turn out to be Satan incarnate. I'm going to support the guy until, you know, obviously, we did not want Hillary Clinton in there. Okay, that's a given. And I'm still not saying I want Hillary Clinton in there, and I'm still very, very glad Trump won. But there's a lot of things going on increasingly now that are moving him in the wrong direction. And that is indisputable. And if you doubt that, just listen to this study today, because we're going to get into that in depth. I don't want to say too much right now, because I'd rather look at this in totality so you can understand what's going on here. It goes on to say, but the U.S. president warned he would do it again, meaning bomb them again, after unleashing a surprise attack on the Syrian regime with a massive show of firepower. Okay, so we're going to be playing a series of sound clips here from different people that are being interviewed about this situation. And the first one we're looking at it's entitled "Massive Retaliation, Syrian Chemical Attack was a fabricated false flag. It makes no sense," says Ron Paul. And so we're going to be looking at that now. Let's go ahead and roll this one.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Today with me is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. Yesterday, there was some bombing with possibly gas exposure in Syria, and things have changed. It reminds me sort of weather reports. Well, if you don't like the weather, just wait an hour. You'll get different weather. Well, that's sort of what happens in the Middle East sometimes. That just wait, it'll change. Yeah. And actually, before this episode of possible gas exposure and who did what, things were going along reasonably well for the conditions. Trump says let the Syrians decide who should run their country, and peace talks were breaking out, and Al Qaeda and ISIS were on the run, on maybe defeated. So it was like, in spite of their problems with this foreign policy, it looked like there was some benefit, but it looks like maybe somebody didn't like that, so there had to be an episode. And the blame now.
When he says maybe someone didn't like that, just think of the Illuminati, the powers that be, or globalists who do not want peace in the Middle East, who want to destabilize the Middle East, who have destabilized the Middle East, who want to see us in World War III, who are profiteering off the weaponry used, who are also looking at the oil coming out of the Middle East. There's a lot of factors to look at here regarding this subject. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
Is that we can't let that happen, because it looks like it might benefit Assad. So Assad, they claim, now went and released gas to kill a bunch of people. But, Daniel, we might not have much of a job here today, because I looked at the New York Times to find out, to get the explanation, and they said, worst chemical attack in years in Syria. U.S. blames Assad. So it's all over and done with. But not quite so easy, is it? What happened 4 years ago in 2013, this whole thing about crossing the red line, and ever since then, the neocons have been yelling and screaming. Even part of the administration is still yelling and screaming about Assad using poison gases on his people 4 years ago. Not quite true.
Yeah, it was never proven, in fact, and the UN official Carla Del Ponte said that attack was most likely done by the rebels based on the evidence. But here you have Nikki Haley, U.S. ambassador to...
So all of this talk about Assad using chemical weapons and this type of stuff, it's never been proven. It was most likely the other way around. It was the rebel forces we were backing and that we created, our government and NATO and these types of things, who actually literally helped to create ISIS and fund them and arm them and equip them and train them, as we have documented over and over in previous studies. Those were the ones that were most likely responsible. So this is the perfect thing to try to bring us into this conflict, is to make all these accusations that Assad did this when they were right on the verge of, well, you're going to see here, right on the verge of peace talks.
When almost as we speak, literally at the UN Security Council, saying, quote, We know Assad has used chemical weapons before. It's not true. It has never been proven that he has. He may have. We do know that the rebels have used them. That has been proven.
And who would benefit? It makes no sense, even if you were totally separate from this and take no sides of this, and you were just an analyst. It doesn't make any sense for Assad under these conditions to all of a sudden use poison gases. It's zero. I think it's zero chance that he would have done this, deliberately, and he's doing this now. But we could also go to a famous senator who's an expert on foreign policy, and we could go ask John McCain to explain it, and he found somebody to blame. And I don't know what he has it in for the president. We criticize our president once in a while, and we try to be, balanced and criticize the things we think he's doing.
So when you think of John McCain, just think of Satan, okay, or Nancy Pelosi, or these types of devils. Lindsey Graham, Satan, okay, just equate the two.
That we don't like, but McCain says blame Trump. It's all Trump's fault because he hasn't been aggressive enough. He's backing off. He wants to have negotiations when you have to get rid of Assad. So he's back in prior to 2011 when the neocons, which are in cahoots with a few allies like Saudi Arabia and Israel, the Sunnis, and the Iranians, they're all in cahoots together. So therefore they have to be destroyed.
Yeah, and it's the fact is, as you point out, we're on the eve of peace talks, literally on the eve of peace talks. Assad has the upper hand in these talks. He's almost, essentially, with his Russian and Iranian allies, wiped al-Qaeda and ISIS out of the country. So on the verge of this great victory that they've suffered for all these years, he decides, I think I'm going to go out and kill some people with gas. And if he just wanted to...
Okay, now that was the most important statement in this audio clip. What he just said there, they're on the verge of peace talks. They've made all these massive, gigantic inroads into actually defeating ISIS, and now all of a sudden, right on the verge of victory, they're going to go and shoot themselves in the foot and gas their own people, Assad. It makes no sense whatsoever. And obviously, the main people pushing this are the mainstream prostitute media like CNN and these types of people that are these types of organizations that are pushing this narrative, which is totally false. And again, CNN is so bad, I can't even I try not to even go to the website. It is such lies and propaganda. It is totally a mouthpiece for Satan and for lies and deception. So if they're pushing this, it's false, or there's some type of major deception interwoven.
Kill people, there are a heck of a lot better ways of doing it than using gas, which just guarantees that the entire world community, including your allies, are going to turn against you. As you say, he would have to be the most insane leader probably in the history of the world, a Caligula or something.
Well, the collusion of several groups, and we might throw pro-oil people in and pro-military industrial people that is in this effort to continue wars going on. But I think it's the same group of people we dealt with when we were trying to prevent, the remaking of the Middle East under Bush and his marching in to have regime change in Afghanistan and Iraq, and look at the results there. But they never learned from this, so they just shift gears, go to Libya. If it doesn't work, let's go over now, and maybe they consider they've had a tremendous success in Ukraine or something, but now it's Syria, and they're into it. But they're all coming together, and when you look up at what they do, is they do have to get some type of public support for the war. Although they're behind the scenes, the neocons and the deep state, they're making the plans, they rule the day, but they still know that they have to use their propaganda machine to get the people behind them. And I think that is what's going on. They did that in Iraq successfully because people believed Saddam Hussein was a monster, and they sort of forgot about it. The people allow the Congress to keep spending all this money, to remake the Middle East. Keeps getting worse. But
okay, so that's basically the first clip there. It goes on for another 12 minutes. I'll give you the links to all these if you want to hear the full, but I'm trying to get through as much today as we can. When this happened, my immediate response was, this is really, really, really bad. This is one of those things that I've been reporting on for a long time regarding them trying to destabilize Syria in order to topple that regime, in order to take over control of that landmass, which would allow free access for pipelines that America and maybe its allies have a vested interest in order getting oil into Europe through that particular pipeline, whereas Russia has its interest in its pipeline going through that. There's a report by Dutch Since that he goes into all that up on the internet as well. I'm not even going to really get into that. That's just one factor of why they want to control this particular landmass. But I knew this was really bad, and I went up and there was a couple polls going on. Now, granted, you may still think it's a good thing right now. You haven't really heard enough. You've heard one Ron Paul clip. I'm going to play you a whole lot more where we're going to look at this a whole lot more in depth. But there was one poll up there. I had just checked Alex Jones's website, and they had a poll going up, and I think it was like 50 or to 55% of his listeners thought it was bad. And I thought that was appalling, because I'm thinking, why isn't this like close to 100%, this attack on Syria? Why? I mean, can't people understand what's going on here, that this is a contrived false flag thing, that this is what I mean, all I need to know is CNN the one pushing it the hardest, and who is behind it? Who are the cheerleaders saying, yeah, let's go to war, let's kill them all, let's do this? Lindsey Graham, Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, John McCain, these types of people. I don't know of one thing that Trump's done yet where they've been cheerleading Trump to say, go, 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 until now. Now, they're all real happy with what Trump just did, and the mainstream media is happy with what he's done. That's all I need to know. If Satan says it's a wonderful, good thing, and that we need to get on board and we need to do this, I'm going to go the opposite direction. So sometimes you have to analyze it. I mean, I came to that conclusion before I even saw. I knew they'd be behind this. They're warmongers. They want to get us into World War III. There's a lot of different reasons they want to control Syria. And so that's about all I needed to see. And I've been getting more and more confirmation regarding this ever since then. So we have Ron Paul's clip here where he brings up a lot of really good points. This came out right after it happened. Okay, this was one of the first reports that did come out. Now, there's another clip, and we're going to be playing a series of these. But before I get into that, the polls, and then I went and I checked Drudge Report. And like I said, from what I can remember, it was like 50 to 55%, I believe, of Alex Jones listeners thought it was bad. Okay. Now, you have to think that Alex Jones listeners are a cut above the national norm, and that they are going to be more savvy than the average person out there that's in the dark. Just the average Joe out there that doesn't have any comprehension of this, and they're only getting their news from the mainstream media. Okay. Well, then I checked Drudge, which is also like considered a conservative outlet for news that tends to push a conservative agenda, that tends to expose a lot of the evil that's going on. And I was in absolute shock when I saw, because they had another poll there. Do you think this was a good thing that we basically bombed Syria? It's not up there now, but it was. It was up there from, I don't know, maybe a day or half a day. And it said like 65% of Drudge Report viewers thought it was a good thing. And Alex Jones, it was like 15 or 20% thought it was a good thing, which I thought that was appalling. 15. I'm like, what planet are you living on? Look who's pushing the narrative. That's all you really need to know. The mainstream media news outlets are all pushing us to a one world government under the Antichrist and false prophet. That's their agenda. That's their goal. So anything they're pushing very, very hard, or giving out this narrative and basically saying it's a foregone conclusion, you need to assume it's a total lie. because it's like, just look at them like you would look at Satan. Can you trust Satan? Of course he's trustworthy. Of course, he would never deceive us, even though he's the master deceiver. They are a mouthpiece for Satan and his fallen angels and his demons and devils and minions that he controls and follow him. So I couldn't believe it. It was like 65%, which you would also consider definitely a cut above the average American as far as if you're going up and you're checking Drudge every day, typically you're going to lean to more of a conservative viewpoint. You're going to be way more, quote, in the know than the average American. And 65% thought this was a good thing, that we just launched 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles at the Syrian air base. Without getting the full story out, obviously, it's this knee-jerk, okay, show the kids, show the little children dying or dead. That's all we're looking at. We're just fixated on that. Meanwhile, worldwide, every day, 100,000 children are aborted in the womb. Where's the outcry? And that's a statistical fact. That's according to their statistics. Worldwide, not just America. Everybody cites, well, 4,000 babies aborted every day in America. I don't know what that statistic is now, whether it's way more or way less. What about the 100,000 worldwide that are aborted every day? Who are even more innocent and helpless than the children in Syria. At least they're children. At least they can walk and ambulate. And babies in the womb can't do that. They can't get away. Now, is it horrible? Yes. It's really horrible that our own government orchestrated this and funded whatever terror group most likely did this, because it makes no sense whatsoever that Assad did this to his own people right on the verge of them making all kinds of unbelievable inroads and defeating ISIS in that area and on the verge of peace talks. He's going to go and basically shoot himself in the foot and sabotage himself and demonize himself to the whole world, Assad. It makes no sense at all. And then you look at all the worst of the worst of the worst on the planet, as far as politicians go, are saying, yeah, go more, war, kill them all. Look at the children. You slime bags could care less. You're the ones that sacrifice children, you devils, you pedophilic devils. You sacrifice them in your Luciferian sacrifices. You're the ones sexually abusing them with your whole pedophilia network that we've talked about at length. These are the same people that all of a sudden now they grew this gigantic heart for the children, even though they're the ones that are behind their deaths, guaranteed. The hypocrisy knows no ends. And I'm just here to shed light on this because this is such a farce, the whole thing. We're being lied to so unbelievably, it defies the imagination. Next report, evidence mounts that Syrian gas attack is a false flag. Now, I'm going to play clips just like I would play a clip from CNN or other news sources in order to glean viewpoints that help bolster and look at a situation or a problem in a more complete manner. Out of the mouth of two or three witnesses, a thing is established. In the multitude of counselors, there is wisdom. Okay, these are Bible verses regarding why we would do this. I am, especially ever since Alex Jones made that unbelievably, disgustingly pathetic apology to James Alefantis, that pedophilic devil from the pit of hell, on air, groveling to him so evidently he wouldn't get sued or something. I have had no use for Jones at all. I'm sorry. He disgusts me. The fact he would do that. And it was almost like, and keeps coming and saying, oh, it was just a false false narrative and it was just their bait. No, it wasn't. There is so much evidence on Comet Pizza. I've got into that. Their own tweets, their own things they've put out, their own pictures from inside there, their own flyers that they have put out, all of the connection with the Podestas. And this is not something that was some kind of red herring, false flag type of thing in order to get people wrapped up into Pizzagate. Pizzagate's real, okay? That pedophilic network is real. And when he came out with that apology to Alefantis, I was like, dude, I'm done. I am, not that I ever trusted you to begin with, not that I ever, I mean, I've got like a 60-page file on Alex Jones, on all the warnings on Alex Jones, okay? But do I still use some of the news that comes out of there that can be verified and vetted as a source of trying to educate other? Yeah, sure. We can look at that. They really must have came down on him when that all happened and said, you don't touch this one. You don't touch this pedophile network. We're going to sue you. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. So he went on there and made this big groveling apology, and it was enough to make me want to vomit. I don't care whatever they throw. I just don't. To me, it's irrelevant. You don't ever defend or backpedal when it comes to pedophiles. I'm sorry, but I couldn't stomach it. Now, this is a clip from his channel, and we're going to be looking at some more information here regarding this. This is very also confirmatory as to what we're talking about, though, with this whole Syrian crisis.
Welcome to this live continuance of our broadcast on our Facebook and YouTube streams. I'm David Knight, and joining me now is Leanne McAdoo. And our top topic of the day is what's happening in Syria. We're going to be talking to Syrian girl. We're going to go to her right away. But Leanne, this is deja vu all over again, isn't it?
Absolutely, David. And this week is the exact reason why I have not owned a television for about 15 years now, because of just the amount of propaganda that they pump at us. And it's the same thing. Wag the dog. You know, it's like Groundhog's Day. Did we not learn anything from the babies in the incubator? Now we've got this this 7-year-old
Well, you talk about
girl.
wag the dog.
Right.
Did we not learn anything from what Bill Clinton did when he would go and bomb Iraq, when there would be revelations that would be damaging to him politically? With Monica Lewinsky, the very next day after the House comes up with articles of impeachment, he goes and bombs Iraq. And so now we have these damaging...
So people like Clinton and this can also do this to get the spotlight off themselves. Monica Lewinsky, you know, clearly having an affair with her, one of the umpteen plethora of women over the years that Bill has had sexual affairs with. Unbelievably well documented. I mean, so many eyewitnesses. In you know, Hillary's done her things, but she's just done it from a lesbian perspective primarily. They're both just degenerate, reprobate devils straight from the pits of hell. And so he comes out on the verge of this, and he has this. Bill Clinton orchestrates this false flag to get the spotlight off himself. Was the main reason that it was done in this particular case.
Revelations about Susan Rice, and this comes up right away. At the same time, they push out Bannon, who has spoken against foreign policy that's based on regime change. That's what Donald Trump ran on.
Right.
And if we go back 4 years ago, as I said, this is deja vu all over.
So foreign policy that's based on regime change is how the wicked, corrupt U.S. Government has, and I'm not saying everybody in the U.S. government is wicked and corrupt. I'm saying the people at the top, though. And in the foreign policy based on regime change would be like us going in and making sure Gaddafi got executed in order to put in our own puppet dictator, who is even more radical, who is a very, very the people that have been installed in these countries that we have destabilized, and it's us in NATO and these types of people, are always far worse than the people that were in there. Gaddafi was no angel, but the people that they're putting in all of these states and all of these countries that have been destabilized are far worse, and typically they're extremely radical Muslims that are very, very, very much wanting World War III. And so this is what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
Right.
This is what we have seen, and we saw it before. Let me read you 4 years ago to our very foolish leader. Do not attack Syria. If you do, many very bad things will happen. And from that fight, the U.S. gets nothing. That was Donald Trump, September 2013, when this exact same scenario was created for us. Then again, he says, President, fill in the blank, do not attack Syria. There is no upside, tremendous downside. Save our powder for another more important day. Another one. The only reason the president wants to attack Syria is to save face over our very dumb red line statement. Do not attack Syria. Fix the USA. That's what we had an election for. We wanted to fix the USA.
So this is the plot. I mean, Donald Trump is there basically imploring Obama, don't attack Syria. Don't do this. Don't do it. And now it's the exact opposite. So has he just drank the Kool-Aid? Have they, quote, got to him? Was he on their side all along? That's hard to definitively say. We're going to be looking at that, though, today, at least as much as we can. And obviously, this is something where more information comes out sometimes by the day. So we're putting together this puzzle and this piece as far as what type of person really is Donald Trump. That's what we're looking at here to a certain extent today. We're going to be kind of going through a lot of different factors on why he may be doing what he's doing.
Not get involved in this disastrous policy of regime change. Now we have Donald Trump agreeing with Lindsey Graham and John McCain with another setup, and that's what we want to talk to Syrian Girl about.
Right. I mean, and just a day before where he was saying that he hadn't changed his mind on how he wanted to deal with Assad. We've got Tulsi Gabbard, who was kind of like the Democratic darling. She took this secret trip to Syria where she actually met with Assad. She got the opportunity, and she said, you know what, I was not going to turn down the opportunity to meet with him. And she really got lambasted for that. People were so angry with her for doing that. But she said, listen, I visited Syria. I met with the people there. And our counterproductive regime change war does not serve America's interests. And it certainly isn't in the interest of the Syrian people. So now after this...
So in other words, she's going over there and basically coming to the conclusion that us getting Assad out of there is not going to be a good thing. Okay, other than for the globalists who want war and want to take over that area and control it. It's not going to be a good thing for that area, for it's going to be a bad thing. So that's going contrary to what the Illuminati wants, though. So they had to do something in order to change that whole narrative. Things were going way too much in a righteous direction, in other words, over in Syria. So this was their response in order to get it moving back into that satanic agenda, which was this whole Syrian false flag event that just took place.
Latest attack, she is tweeting out saying, you know, anyone who's responsible must be held accountable, whether it be Assad or ISIS or Al-Qaeda or anyone who is in that area who is going to have access to chemical weapons. So she's not necessarily changing her tune from what she brought back from that initial visit, but she is also saying, you know, she's not making it as an abrupt of a flip-flop. So
Did we not learn anything 4 years ago? As we did this full investigation, everybody immediately jumped 4 years ago and said it's Assad's government that's doing this. It's the only way that this could have happened.
no
And
investigation.
yet we had gas attacks before in the area that they had found had been done by rebels. There was an investigation that was eventually done, and we had not only the UN and Russia, but also U.S. investigators who said this is not, there's no proof that this was done by the Syrian government. So we had this discussion before, and the thing that concerns me, and as we're talking about essentially the civil war that's going on in the White House, which they say is not happening, but we can see the signs of this. We know that there are different advisor groups there. This really does have consequences. They had to get rid of General Flynn, who had explained to everybody, who understood that we had created armed and trained ISIS, that we were funding them for regime change. We've seen this happen, the disasters that have happened in Libya, creating more problems than they've solving absolutely nothing. But let's go to Syrian Girl now. Syrian Girl, tell us from your perspective, what you're seeing there with this false narrative.
Hi, thanks for having me on. It's like deja vu.
Yes.
3 years ago was exactly the same scenario. Last time in 2013, I actually told Alex Jones that this false flag attack would result not in an invasion of Syria, but basically disarmament. This was before Putin even said anything about disarmament. And the reason I know that is because I know that the US would never invade a nation that they know possesses chemical weapons or any sort of weapon of mass destruction. And they had to remove those weapons in order to enter the Syrian sphere. And that is exactly what I said would happen, that a few years down the line, they would come back and claim that Syria didn't, in fact, get rid of its chemical weapons, and they would use that as a casus belli to invade. And we've seen that happen with Iraq. It's exactly the same thing. In 1991, Iraq got rid of its chemical weapons. In 2003, in spite of the OPCW saying that Iraq no longer has chemical weapons, the Iraq war still happened. And we end up with ISIS, we end up with terrorism around the world, we end up with chaos, and we end up on the brink of World War III.
You mentioned, hang on a second, you mentioned OPCW. Let's put that out for most people are not paying attention to that kind of detail. That's the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. This is a organization that is tasked by the Security Council of the UN to go around and examine whether or not these people had these weapons. And as this happened, the response from the Russian spokesman, Zakharova, said it is crucial to call upon an OPCW fact-finding mission in charge of investigating the use of chemical weapons in Syria to collect evidence of the incident after the following condition. Composition of the fact-finding mission will be submitted to the UN Security Council for approval. It will be balanced in terms of geographical representation. So if we're going to go to war, if we're going to set the area on fire, if we're going to escalate this, can't we at least have a reasonable investigation and hope that there are going to be people from both sides taking a look at this and presenting forensic evidence before we just run off half-cocked and start shooting the world up?
Well, wait a minute, David. Turkey has done 3 autopsies on some of the victims, and they say sarin gas was used by Assad. So I'm sure Turkey is completely non-biased here, and they went in and they did autopsies here on 3 of the people killed. So let's just go ahead and take Erdogan. I'm sure these were not the chemical weapons that passed through Turkey via Saudi Arabia.
Do you want to comment on that, Syrian girl? I mean, the responses that I've seen from that is that if it's weaponized, that they would need to have full hazmat materials, or they would die from that if it's fully weaponized, as you would expect a state to be using. So,
I completely agree with you. If it was sarin, it would have been homemade. Everyone has seen the photos and the videos of the white helmets using their bare hands. Sarin can be absorbed through the skin, and it will kill you. Weaponized sarin will kill thousands. The Tokyo sarin attack resulted in 12 dead, but 4,000 injuries, and that was homemade sarin alone. If it was weaponized sarin, we would be looking at a completely different scenario. Obviously, it's very interesting that Turkey would come out and say that it is in fact sarin, because we've seen the narrative shift so many different times. At first they said it was sarin, then they said it was chlorine. They can't quite decide on a narrative, because if they say it's sarin, people then say, well, Syria got rid of its sarin.
They're showing these pictures, and they're literally, they look so staged of this thing where they're showing these 2 white hat guys who we're going to see. These are this actual group of these white hats are actually connected with, I believe, al-Nusra, one of the terrorist organizations over there. And they're the ones responsible for going in there and helping these people. And this guy's laying there, and I mean, they're just sitting there. The 2 guys, like the white hats, and there's a guy that supposedly just got hit. Who knows? This could all literally be like in a Hollywood set somewhere. I don't know, but he's laying there, and if it was really, as we're going to see, if it was, excuse me, if it was really sarin gas, what would end up happening is they would have to be in full biological gear because it's a nerve agent. And they couldn't just be helping this guy or these other victims without wearing full biological gear, or they themselves would die as well. Okay. Now, if it was a chlorine-based type of gas, yeah, they could be there without biological or chemical suits on. Okay, because it's not a nerve agent; it's more of a choking agent. But they're there, and and they're just sitting there, and they're not moving. They're 2 guys with white hats. It's like they're posing for a picture, but the camera's moving. It's not a still frame shot. It looks so weird, and it's like they're like posing where they're gonna take some rubble off the guy, but they're not doing anything. They're just sitting there. Like, okay, pose for the camera. It makes no sense at all. It looks incredibly contrived, and that's just one of the things about this.
So how could it be Syrian sarin? So then it comes back to the fact that there's been multiple reports that the rebels have chemical weapons, that they have sarin, that Hillary Clinton brought Libya's chemical weapons to the Syrian rebels. This is a Seymour Hersh article. And in fact, the United Nations said that they suspected the attack that happened in 2013 was behind what the rebels were behind. This was Carle Del Ponte. You can also look that up. So we have a lot of evidence that this is a false flag. In fact, more evidence than last time. Last time it was very well timed because the OPCW had arrived in Damascus the same exact day as the chemical attack happened. And that was because they were brought to Damascus by the Syrian government to investigate a chemical attack that was conducted by the rebels in Aleppo a month earlier. And now we have also, again, perfect timing. Trump says Assad is no longer a priority. The next day, 2 days later, you get this false flag attack, and suddenly Trump is changing his tune.
That's right, because we have different...
That's all you need to know right there. Did not fit the narrative. They create this event, which makes no sense. It's literally political suicide for Assad when everything's going in the right direction, when they've got the situation with ISIS and that under control. And we don't like that because we created ISIS, our government primarily, trained them, fund them, airdrops to them. We've documented this over and over again. And I'm not saying there were no other countries involved there, but as a destabilization tool. Is ISIS real? Sure, they're real. It's almost like, taking a pit bull and you could maybe make a nice dog out of it, but you turn it into a killer because of the way you bring it up and train it. It's very, very common with pit bulls to do that. Okay, that's what I mean. I'm not saying that Islam can ever be, but we created this thing, is what I mean. Okay, we created ISIS. I don't mean to compare, because Islam could never be good. Okay, regarding a pit bull could be. But what I'm saying is we actually trained, we created, we funded, we did all that to bring them to this point. We put them in a position where they could go in there and destabilize and do our bidding and things of this nature. Okay, and again, we've gotten into this in so many previous studies where we've documented this. So yeah, this had to happen on their end because they got to make sure that we totally destabilize and get Assad out of there.
Advisors in place.
Exactly. And Michael Flynn, he was one of the advisors that said that he believed possibly the rebel attack in 2013 was a false flag. And maybe that's one of the reasons he was removed.
Yes.
I do want to get into two things. I want to get into a little bit about the evidence and a lot about the real agenda behind this and what we're going to see, if possible.
Yeah, let's talk about the false flag aspect, but before we leave the Michael Flynn thing, it's very clear that not only did they want Michael Flynn removed, but they have tried to purge people that he brought in. The CIA made it very clear. We've had a lot of media reporting, both for and against Trump, reporting that the CIA has said that these individuals that Flynn brought in were unacceptable to them. Why? Because they want to do this false flag. So let's talk about the evidence that this particular attack was a false flag.
Well, putting aside the perfect timing that this happened, where the State Department just made a statement that they no longer see removing Assad as a priority, and that the Syrian people must decide their own president. Aside from that, a lot of the reports are coming from the so-called White Helmets NGO, which is George Soros funded. It's receiving UK and US tax dollars, and they've been filmed carrying Al-Qaeda flags around, taking part in executions, hanging out with the child beheaders of the Nur al-Zinki group, one of the rebel groups that the CIA vetted and gave weapons to, which ended up beheading a child. Channel 4 News featured a video of those child beheaders hanging out with the White Helmets. I, on one of my channels, Syrian Girl War.
And again, you're seeing the White Helmets literally there in the propaganda photos regarding the chemical attack with, like, there were the two, like I said, they looked like they were posing with the guy. There was like rubble on the guy's legs, and they're just posing. They're not moving, and the camera's still going. It looked so unbelievable. You can watch it. It's on this video. You could see it. It looks so contrived. I haven't heard them really mention that, but man, I mean, it's horrible. It's like this big Hollywood production.
Have a video of two White Helmet members torturing a Syrian soldier. Like, the White Helmets, as we now know very clearly, are the same individuals that are with Al-Qaeda. They just put on a white helmet and suddenly they're no longer Al-Qaeda. And prior to this attack, a week before, in a Christian town in Hama, near Hama, there were actually 250 people that were kidnapped. So it's very clear that these rebels do not care about civilians, and they do not care about children. They behead children, so why would they care? And in the past, they've used children as tools, pawns for this political agenda.
Let's talk about the doctor. There was a
reason-
Pakistani-British doctor who tweeted out that he had received gas masks, and he was holding interviews. He was taking interview requests instead of helping the people as the injuries were coming in. His name is Sajul Islam. What do you know about him?
Well, you know, he was actually one of the people who was arrested on terrorism charges for kidnapping two British journalists in Syria. And while they didn't have enough evidence on him, and because the journalists couldn't testify, and he ran back away to Syria, he was actually removed from the medical board because of this incident. And another interesting thing that was happening at the time is one of these, you know, Al-Qaeda-linked journalists posted on his Facebook that tomorrow we're going to begin a campaign about chlorine gas attacks. And then this happens. So once again, the media is unsure whether it's chlorine or it's sarin. They can't settle on it. But there's been uncanny, they can't possibly be psychic, you know, indicators that they've been pre-planning this false flag attack. And in fact, they've been receiving hazmat suits and gas masks days before the attack happened. So they must have known that they were going to use them.
So we have that audio clip. Yeah, this has all been contrived. They were planning for it. They knew that they had to have some type of narrative, some type of breaking news thing like this in order to demonize Assad once again, and to get the whole world turned against him, and for the justification of what Trump did with firing the 59 Tomahawk missiles into that airbase. So we have that. Now we're going to go to the next clip here, which we're going to go ahead about 5 minutes.
Issue. The Kurds have been receiving very, very positive media from all sides. You never hear anything bad about them. They're supposedly fighting ISIS in the north, and they're hanging out with the US military. The real fact is, however, is that they've been ethnically cleansing the Christian population in the northeast of Syria and Iraq, because they are of the Assyrian ethnicity, and they do not want anyone in their region to be of an ethnicity other than Kurdish. The regions that they're trying to take is filled with oil and agricultural resources, but Kurds are not a majority in those areas. They only make up 40%, and so to become a majority, there's been basically continuous ethnic cleansing campaigns. They actually assassinated one and tried to assassinate a second Christian Assyrian leader, and then tried to pin it on ISIS. But because one of the people they tried to kill survived, he was able to go and tell his story and say, actually, it was the Kurds that tried to kill me. They've been disarming the Christians in Iraq and confiscating their land. Just look up the Assyrian Christians in Iraq and see the kind of things that they're saying. Basically, creating a Kurdish state is gonna expedite the end of the Christians in the Middle East, because ISIS is just, you know, the excuse to create these separate states. It's basically an enzyme. It was always made as a target, and at the end of the day, the target is balkanization, and they can't do balkanization unless they get rid of Assad, they get a UN Security Council Resolution 7, just like Iraq was under, so that they can be legally in there to legally like change the Syrian constitution, because the Syrians do refuse to put anything that is religious or ethnically sectarian or racist inside our constitution. So unfortunately, the people who are in the deep state who refuse to give up on this idea are prepared to take us to World War III. And you see them threatening Iran, threatening North Korea, threatening Russia, threatening China in the South Sea. Maybe they know that if this is really going to happen, it's going to happen on all fronts. It's going to be a global war.
And that's what
So you've got, now we see one of the other main reasons, making sure that the Christians are annihilated in this region by taking Assad out of the picture, who was actually protecting the Christians. Okay, now you let these Kurds in, and you let ISIS go crazy, and who are sworn enemies. Kurds, I just looked them up, and I wanted to see what their the majority of Kurds are Sunni Muslim. So and there's also a minority that are Shia Muslims. So that's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. Mystical practices and participation in Sufi orders are also widespread among Kurds. So they're involved in, I mean, Islam is high-level witchcraft. You're praying to the moon god. That's their god, the moon god, Allah. Okay, it's not the God of the Bible. If it was the God of the Bible, obviously they would be going by the Bible. They're not. They're going by the Quran and all of their other unholy devil books. Okay, so these are sworn, you've got ISIS, you've got the Kurds. These are all sworn enemies of the Christians. And so now we see another main reason why they're wanting to destabilize and get Assad out of there. Okay, because they want to annihilate and destroy and kill the Christians in that region. So this is, this is just so unbelievably wicked. All of the, and here you got Trump, acting like, I don't know whether he's just surrounded by devils that are feeding him this information, or at this point whether he's just drank the Kool-Aid and is part of the problem and is just going to go along with whatever he's being told to do. I can't say for sure, but he has radically shifted now in regard to it, especially this one issue. This seems to be, and I don't know if we'll be able to look back in the future and say that this really was the turning point of the Trump administration toward evil. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm saying on this issue, he has got it so polar opposite wrong. He is so going into the satanic playbook. He is doing Satan's bidding by doing this. Now, you could say, well, I haven't heard enough to prove that. Well, okay, keep listening, because there's more regarding this. Now, I'm not saying Trump is of Satan, but I'm saying he is going by Satan's playbook right now. He is on Satan's playbook regarding this issue, regarding what he has initiated through these bombings and what could result from it, which is exactly what the New World Order wants, which is war in that region, which is World War III ultimately.
What's concerning about all this is exactly a global war, and that's what's concerning, because we see people like John McCain, who seems to only get excited when the possibility of massive war and bloodshed is involved. And that's the thing that concerns me, is the fact that we now have Donald Trump, who campaigned and won on the idea that we are not going to set the world on fire with regime change. We saw what happened in Libya. Omar Gaddafi was not a great guy. He was not a good guy. Nobody is saying he was a good guy. But things are fairly stable there. We didn't have the kind of situation that we have now, which is an arms bazaar for terrorism, total chaos in the area. And we started that. And we're reaping the whirlwind after that. And they're doing the same thing. ISIS was created. It's a rebranding of Al-Qaeda. People need to understand what it represents. The Islamic State in Iran and Syria. That is the goal of what we have John McCain involved in. And this is what is really concerning as I watch this, is you're talking about the fact they set up the summit with the Jordanian king and so forth. They're very cleverly isolating Donald Trump from his voters, from the people, from the agenda that he ran on and won with. That's why he needs to hear our voices. People in America need to wake up and understand that it's not just the Syrian lives that are on the line. It is our lives as well. this chaos, this death, this destruction.
Yeah, but the thing is if he would have went up to Drudge Report that night, and that again being, you would think Drudge Report viewers definitely cut above 65% approval for what he just did. That means that the majority of the Drudge Report, 65% of the people that view the Drudge Report don't have a clue about what they're literally really wanting. They don't have a clue about what really happened over there regarding this being a false flag. That is very concerning. Okay? Very, very concerning to me. And because if Drudge Report had that, the average Joe person out there, you're going to have it probably even a higher percentage of them saying, yeah, got to protect the kids, got to do this for the children. It's all this big knee-jerk reaction, and they're not getting the facts before they've actually vetted what's actually really going on there.
This enabling and equipping and training of terrorists is going to blow back on us. It already is in many places in the West. That is what is so concerning about this. I'm not talking about increasing our safety and security by continuing these regime policies. We're actually making it worse for Americans. We're not going to be safer by spreading this kind of war and chaos throughout the Middle East. It's a very complicated situation. As you were pointing out, Syrian Girl, we have different ethnic groups, we have different religious groups, we have different political groups. They're all after resources in that area. That is why the CIA is involved in this kind of divide and conquer policy.
Right.
And we need to push back against this deep state narrative that appears to be taking Donald Trump. They couldn't defeat him in the election. They couldn't defeat these ideas. But now it appears that they're going to surround him and isolate him. I always said that was the real issue that we're going to have. They were going to, if there was a massive groundswell of Americans who would push for this, push for Trump, push for this type of change, they would wait, let that happen, and then isolate the individual that was elected. And that's precisely what it appears they're successfully doing now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have that. Now, hopefully you've probably heard enough regarding this particular issue to convince you that of what we're dealing with there. Let's go further. This is what I'm trying to do is present different angles here, addressing different parts, proving this is false. Okay, from a logical standpoint. The next one is Michael Savage turns on Trump and says the Syrian attack was a false flag. Okay, so now he's got a lot of his conservative base starting to turn on him that are in the know. They're starting to say, hey, listen, this is not right. There's something wrong. You're not looking at this. What are you doing? Look whose side you're on. Do you understand the implications of this? Being on the same side as John McCain and Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton and the CNN mainstream prostitute media, all those lies. I mean, just look at what side you're on all of a sudden. These are the people that were attacking you 2 minutes ago. Now they're cheering you on? Doesn't that make you by itself, kind of...
What's going on? This is the Savage Nation. I am the only person in the American media with a science background. I intend to approach today's program...
Okay, thing about this guy, Michael Savage, he is so full of himself. I mean, he's more full of himself than Rush Limbaugh. He's full of himself in such a way that it's really like condescending and offensive. So bear in mind, as you listen to this, understand this guy thinks that he is the smartest person on the planet. He's very condescending and, I mean, arrogant and prideful. But he is right on the money regarding what he's saying here.
As though this is a jury trial. And I hope that you, the listeners, will be the jury. My postulate is quite simple. Want to hear it? Because you're going to hear it. This was not sarin gas, number one. It looks like phosgene gas. I realize those are big words for those in the media who are ready to put on military uniforms on their radio and television shows. This was a complete false flag event. And I'll give you some evidence, and you decide for yourself whether this thing is a fake or not. First of all, let's start from the beginning. Was this a strategic move that had the approval of Congress, approval of the UN? Were any U.S. interests threatened by Assad? Assad was fighting ISIS, for God's sakes. He had ISIS on the run with the help of Russia. What happened? Who just won? Why, we just helped ISIS. Isn't that what McCain and Lindsey Graham are celebrating? So we've just turned 180 degrees. Bannon was out, Kushner was in, and all of a sudden the strike was launched. I told that to you yesterday. This was a military tweet by Donald Trump. Quote me. President, known as a tweeter. This was a military tweet. Has he thought about what the next tweet might be? He better, because there's got to be another one very soon. I mean, really, what did he do militarily? It was actually a weak strike when you think about it. If he really wanted to take out Assad, wouldn't he have struck Damascus and killed Assad with a heavier weapon? I mean, think about this. This was a limp-wristed attack in order to gain the attention of the fools in the media and the fools amongst the so-called Republican voters who think this was a real great military action. So let me go back to my main contention here. This was not even a sarin gas attack. That's aside from the fact that Assad, who has been accused of gassing his own people, had nothing to gain by gassing his own people. Let's assume that you are in the camp that bought hook, line, and sinker the big lie that Assad would gas his own people with sarin gas. Now, what would Assad have gained by doing that? Is he stupid? Is he that stupid not to have figured out what would happen a day later? So why would he do it? He was winning. Was he losing? Was he desperate? Was Assad desperate enough to use sarin on children? Of course not. But there's no logic in America. There are just robots, RNCers, neocons pretending to be conservatives. Let me give you some evidence and you decide for yourself. Because this military tweet by President Trump is an embarrassment. It was not a strategic move. Has he thought about what follows? McCain is glowing over this. What does that tell you? The Soros globalist cabal has now won. Trump is doing their bidding. Isn't this what we told Hillary we didn't want her to do? Isn't this why we voted for Trump? Isn't this why I sacrificed a year of my life to work to get Trump elected? Isn't this why I wrote Trump's War? There's a whole chapter in Trump's War that is entitled Trump's War Against the War Machine. That is a heck of a chapter. Trump's War Against the War Machine, Chapter 7.
And now he's right on board with the war machine, with the very people that he's supposedly been fighting against. Right in lockstep with them and George Soros. Okay, the essentially Satan incarnate.
About the liberal warmongers. I warned about the neocons. I warned about the war profiteers. I warned you that this might happen. And moreover, yesterday on this show, right here on the airwaves, I warned you this was coming. I said I'd be surprised if there was no military action by Friday night. Well, unfortunately, I was right. My evidence will be presented to you, and you, the jury, are going to decide. I'm Clarence Darrow for the prosecution that this is a gigantic false flag, gigantic lie. It's a wag the dog scenario. It's what Bill Clinton did. It's what they all do when they get into trouble and their poll numbers are low, by the way. I said it to you yesterday, so I'll repeat it again today. He was in a corner. He was hated by everyone except people like me who supported him. Did you hear what I just said? So he thought that by appeasing the warmongering crowd, the McCain military-industrial complex, they would come to love him. Now, of course, the idiots in the media don't know what to do. They're just sheeple. Even the great Rush Limbaugh was saying, I couldn't believe what I heard. Pardon me? I listened to the great Rush Limbaugh who said, well, Assad's been gassing his people for 7 straight years. Where'd that come from? Where'd Rush get that information from? I guess it came directly over the transom from the RNC. This is getting sicker by the day. It was a false flag. McCain wanted it to happen. They've been screaming to bomb Assad for years. Lindsey the sicko Graham wanted it to happen. Pelosi the warmonger wanted it to happen. Schumer the warmonger. CNN all wanted the bombing of Assad. Now you know you're on the wrong side. If that cesspool of filth supports your actions, this whole thing stinks to high heaven. Hours before the airstrikes, we learned that Hillary Clinton called for the bombing of Syrian airfields. Did you know that? So it looks like Hillary won. It looks as though they...
So hours before this happened, Hillary was saying, bomb them, okay? So you've got every wicked, evil faction of American politics in the mainstream media saying do this and Donald Trump does it. I hope it was, I mean, I don't hope, but I hope that it was from the standpoint of what he talked about. His poll numbers were tanking. What had been insinuated quite a bit, obviously, is that he was in league with the Russians. You know, so this could have been done because, okay, tanking poll numbers, everybody's against me. He had made overtures recently that he was going to start reaching out to the Democrats. In other words, he's trying to do anything he can do to get his presidency, to get his agenda moving again, and he's starting to really compromise in order to do that. And he's starting to say, okay, I'll get in bed with these devils and work with them as long as I can keep my presidency going, and as long as maybe my poll numbers go up and I'm liked and I can get things go. I'm not sure what his justification was. And it might have been, too, because he'd been accused so much lately, and falsely, that he was in league with the Russians. And he was working with the Russians. So this could have been that bold statement saying, no, look at what I just did. I defiantly went against the Russians in order to calm the lamestream media down. From one standpoint, I would hope that if he did do this, that was the only reason, and that it wasn't that he literally, truly has been in bed with them all along, and this has all been pre-planned ahead of time, and he knows exactly what he's doing, and he planned this all along. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. I hope it's that, no, he's not totally evil incarnate, and he's just duped us this whole time. I don't know. Time will tell.
Hillary, deep state wing won, and Trump is now basically doing their bidding. But to the evidence now, the evidence that only I can present because of my background in phytochemistry. Very simple. Was it sarin gas to begin with? Well, I don't know. I'm a genius. I don't know. What do I know? He gassed his own people. What's the difference? Well, it's a big difference because you bought it hook, line, and sinker. You want to hear why I don't think it was sarin gas, but probably phosgene, a chlorine-based gas? It's very simple. Phosgene is a choking agent. It's derived from chlorine. It is not a nerve agent. There's a big difference here. If you look at the videos and the stories, you'll see that my allegation or my suspicion may be correct, because the first responders would have all died if it was nerve gas. You didn't know that. I guess you didn't learn that on MSNBC or CNN. If it had been a nerve gas, as most of you fools think it was, those of you who are saluting all of a sudden, you became warmongers overnight. I thought that Trump was a man of peace who was not going to lead us to war. I thought Trump was the man who was going to reach out to Putin and become his friend. That's why I worked so hard to stop the war against Russia. Boy, was I wrong. Did they turn this guy? Bannon was out, the son-in-law was in, and the next day there was a bombing attack. A little impotent bombing attack. A military tweet is what it was.
Now, we're going to be looking at the whole Bannon being out and Jared Kushner and that whole angle heavily coming up. But we have to proceed one step at a time here. And so he's bringing up a lot of really good points here.
That's all it was, a military tweet. This wasn't a real attack on Assad. They wanted Assad out. You would have taken him out in Damascus. It was nothing. It was Clinton bombing an aspirin factory. But you're all cheering. Think about what that means about you, all you cheerleaders out there for the war.
But see, this is what so concerned me when I went up to Drudge, and I saw like 65% of the people were saying, yes, it's a good thing. We're so glad he bombed them. Or this. And I was in disbelief. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was grieved enough when I went up to Alex Jones's site and saw, like, I don't know, 20 to 30%, I forget, approval. And I'm like, what? And then I thought, well, maybe Drudge will be better. No, it was way worse. It was like 65 when I checked it. Approval. And then it dawned on me, I'm like, man, we're heading for World War III. If this is the mindset of people, if they're not seeing through this, if they're not, I mean, anything mainstream media puts out there, the fact that you would believe that just because Trump is in office, and literally from what I've heard a lot of different people in alternative radio, Christian alternative radio, come out and make the statement that since Trump got elected, the Christians have went back to sleep. The Christians that were praying for him to get in, and the Christians that were praying against, and I'm not saying none of them are praying against this, but remember all the pedophile networks that have been going down, okay? And how that all happened in very close proximity to the election. Remember all that happened and has been happening to a certain extent? Haven't heard a lot about the pedophile stuff recently. But a lot of them have went back to sleep because, and this is what happens. You get somebody in there that has an R by their name, Republican. And with Trump, and a lot of the Christians have went back to sleep. The people in the prepper community, I think Dave Hodges was talking to somebody and saying that people that own these prepping, and they're like, yeah, they're the preppers, the Christians, a lot of them have went back to sleep. Man, this is the last time you want to go to sleep. We could be so on the verge. You have to be vigilant, like the Bible says. Day and night. You can't let your guard down. We're moving into the most evil, deceptive time the world has ever known, according to the Word of God. This is the last time you want to go to sleep, and the last time you want to stop praying and or fasting about these types of issues. So, again, that could have all been orchestrated so people would go to sleep. Whereas had Hillary gotten in, the Christians would still be in a hyper-vigilant mode. I don't know. Again, time will tell. No. So am I saying that they wanted Trump? No, I'm not saying that. I do not think that was the case. I do not think they expected him to get in. Every indicator was that. They had the parties all pre-planned for Hillary for that night, literally. And I thank God that she did not get in. But what has happened since then, though, is increasingly very, very, very concerning. Chuck Baldwin, I guess, just got kicked off of News with Views because he came out with things critical of Trump. I'm like, you're gone. What? See, I told you this from the beginning. And this is why I'm so glad I'm not yoked up with anybody. So one thing about me, you don't have to worry about my sponsors dropping me or anything else like that. I don't have any. I have none. I don't make money off YouTube clicks. I don't make money off sponsors. We have whatever donations that come in and whatever I can do in nutrient sales. That's basically what supports the ministry. I don't beg for money. I mean, you ever hear me up here begging for money? Every other broadcast I listen to, it's constant. It never ends. You're either trying to sell a product, or you're begging for money, or doing this, or saying we're this or that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But what that gains me is I don't have to worry about stepping on anybody's toes. I said this from the beginning that if I will support Trump regarding what I'm seeing him doing, his current actions, okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay, but if he gets in there and he starts turning and getting onto the agenda of the globalists and not fulfilling his campaign processes, I am not going to give him any quarter. I'm not. I'm not going to give him a free pass. I will not do it. And this is the beginning of that, evidently. I was praying that there would be enough pushback against this, but from the polling that I've seen done on this, the polls I've seen done, it doesn't appear there's going to be any pushback. If anything, it's going to give him more of a green light to go forward with what he's doing. Now it's just a very, very fringe group of alternative media, and it seems like Michael Savage, who are actually seeing and identifying this for what it is.
So now let's go back to this allegation that it was not even sarin gas. Yesterday we were watching some of the videos that were coming out. And a friend of mine was tweeting me, actually emailing me, and saying, wait a minute. A person's clothing can release sarin after it has come in contact with sarin vapor, which can lead to exposure of other people. That was number one. I thought that was really interesting. Then another one came on later saying, if it's sarin, why no gloves? And the individual said, yeah, there are other photos showing them taking samples of the toxin wearing sandals. Again, made no sense. Following the logic, or have you lost? You can't follow me because your mind went blank? Well, I'll keep going anyway. This is called logic scientific method. This is...
They should have been in some type of chemical suit if it was sarin, okay? And like I said, the guys, that photo shoot that it seemed like they were posing for with the one guy and the other one, those guys weren't in any of that. They weren't. They were handling the bodies with their bare hands. They would be dead. So we know it wasn't that. We know 100% for sure they're lying to us.
Well, deductive analysis. This is what anyone would do who really wanted to get to the bottom of this big lie. Okay? I question the narrative that it was sarin gas, number one, as I question the idea that it was even Assad who did it. That's the big picture. Why would he do it, you morons, you? You stupid people out there who are buying this hook, line, and sinker. I go to the Drudge Report. There's a poll. Approve, disapprove.
Okay, now I'm not going to go that far and call everybody stupid morons who maybe went along with this. Okay? Let's not alienate everybody and denigrate them and call them insults. Not everybody has his biochemistry background or whatever. He's bringing up some great points here. I just don't... This is why I have a hard time listening to Michael Savage, because my word, I mean, God forbid you call the guy up and say anything that he doesn't like. You ever heard those when people call in? Oh my, I mean, talk about arrogant browbeating and berating, and oh my word, it's horrible. So I'm not saying, it's very concerning to me, but hopefully if you were in that camp, now you're not. Hopefully you've heard enough, and we're going to give you a whole lot more. And hopefully what you can do is reach out to other people and say, listen, it couldn't have been this. This is the main, I mean, look at who's pushing it alone. That should be number one gigantic red flag. Then look at the actual situation. Who are we getting all of the confirmation from? Turkey that said they did autopsies of 3 of the bodies. Oh yeah, we could trust Turkey. The mainstream media, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, CNN. That by itself should tell you, you cannot believe this. This is all a lie. It's the opposite of what they're saying. So that we can educate other people and get them understanding. But I don't know. It's not looking good at this point.
I knew what it would be. I mean, it's stupid. I know what this is going to be. Drudge poll. Trump strikes Assad. Good, bad. I knew that I'd be in the minority. 66% of the fools who voted said it's a good thing.
See, he's citing that same poll I saw. When he saw it was 66%. 66, that's appropriate. It was a good thing that we did this.
Now, if Obama had done it, it would have been a bad thing. But because Trump did it,
Right.
it's a good thing.
Exactly.
I'm a Trump bot now. I'm just a little robot. Whatever.
The Bible says, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and that maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departeth from the Lord. Jeremiah 17:9. Do not put your trust in man. Do not put your trust in me. Do not put your trust in any entity. Man. Put your trust in the Lord Jesus Christ and the Word of God. Okay, I've told you that over and over. Man can and will fail you. So this is why it's so important. And again, this is the very reason why a large percentage of the patriot community, of the Christians, and let's say pro-Second Amendment community have went back to sleep because, oh, Trump's in office. I believe everything. I went to the rallies. I did this. I did that. I believe him implicitly. He's for our best interest. So therefore, I'm going back to sleep and I'll trust his judgment. No. You hold people accountable. You hold people accountable. And I know, I think there was other ministers out there coming against me, denigrating me, saying, oh, look, you know, Scott Johnson, he's doing this or he's a Trump supporter, this and that. I'm not, listen, like I said, I am going to come out. I'm not going to give him a free pass. I'm proving that. I wish I didn't have to do this. I do. Obviously, I wish he was going along with what he was saying. And I'm not saying he hasn't done a lot of good things since he's been in office. Do I think he has been fought every step of the way by the Senate and the Congress and the globalists and Hollywood and the mainstream media? Yes, I do. And I think maybe it's finally, this is best case scenario, it's finally, the pressure has finally got to him, and he's finally capitulating, and he's finally giving in. And I say best case scenario because I would hate to think that he was on board the whole time and all this was a big act. It doesn't make sense because the whole world has been against the guy. I mean, the whole evil world, from the Pope on down, has been against the guy. That you cannot deny. CNN is still against him to a large extent. I just checked them today, and they're not. I mean, I looked up here. I'll look again. There's still all kind of stuff. So, in other words, he hasn't come over enough to their side yet. Could Trump play ball with the New World Order, and would all the mainstream media totally get on the bandwagon? Yes, they would, absolutely. Here, what are the main headlines right now on CNN? Bannon's worst week in Washington. Okay, so Bannon's basically, Bannon's descent, Kushner's rise, show that family ties run deep. We're going to see how deep those family ties are. Trump to Bannon and Kushner, work this out. So there's this big, now who does the mainstream media want in there? They want in Kushner, and you're going to see why. You're going to see why very, very soon. The SNL puts out another Trump thing where Alec Baldwin's doing Trump again. He's doing Bill O'Reilly. But Trump considers rearranging the seats at his table. What this photo of the Trump war room tells us. I mean, it's still a very, very big attack on Trump. Still. It's not like they've given him free. They are for, though, what he is doing right now. And he is coming and getting more into their good graces. But that's the last place you want to be. If you're in the good graces of CNN, because I'll just use CNN, or the mainstream media, you're in the center of Satan's will. Because the media is that bad at this point.
Whatever he does is good. He's smarter than everybody. Only 20% of you were smart enough to know how bad this was. So anyway, I know I'm a minority. A smart move would be to support it.
Can you imagine if I talked to my listeners that way? My listeners, only 20% of you were smart enough to see their... Golly, man. Really? No, come on. I mean, I don't know how this guy has any listeners. I can't... He's so offensive. He's so demeaning and condescending. He's like this all the time. I don't know how he has any... I mean, I don't know.
The smart move would be to support the president no matter what he does, but that would make me worthless to you. I may as well quit if I did that. I may as well retire if I just supported him no matter what he did. I'm not going to do that. I have an obligation to my listeners to go where the truth lies. And I know where the chips will fall on this. It's not very good. I know most of you are not going to follow me. You're going to follow the lie. Most of you are going to continue to believe that it was a good thing that Assad did it and he gassed his own people and that Trump is a genius. Good for you. Well, goody for you. The globalist cabal has won. The McCain cabal has won. How is this an America First decision? To engage in a conflict between two enemies of the United States. How does that match the campaign of America First, no foreign wars? How does that create one job in Ohio, one job in Pennsylvania? Where are the jobs? Savage says no war. It's linked up on the top of Drudge. I was pleased to see that. Didn't think anybody would notice. Because I went on the air yesterday and my show was entitled, I Am a Conservative Peacenik. Do you want war with Russia? Just read it. I'm not going to read it to you. And I'll go back again to the evidence I was trying to present to you that not only would it make no sense for Assad to have gassed his own people, if you still have any logic left in your brain, because look what happened right after. The world turned on him. Right? The world turned on him. Why would he do it? Is he stupid? Is Russia dumb? Oh, I see. Wait a minute. Let me follow your genius minds. All of you think that Assad did this to his own people. Let's see. Now, Russia is stupid. The other day you were saying that the KGB head of Russia is the smartest man on earth, very cagey, anti-American, ran the KGB for many years, and that Putin is so smart and so evil. So that smart, evil man would have had his puppet Assad gas his own people, not having thought the next step out. Let me tell you something about Putin. He doesn't tweet in the middle of the night. Putin doesn't tweet in the middle of the night and not think about the consequences of the next tweet. Of course he would have thought about it. He wouldn't have done that. He doesn't want the whole world turning on him after he's helped Assad beat back ISIS. I thought ISIS was our #1 enemy. The Free Syrian Army? There is no such thing. The Free Syrian Army are our moderate terrorists created by the CIA and John McCain. John McCain and Lindsey Graham are the mouthpieces for this army of murderers. What is going to happen to the Christians, the Alawites, and the Jews in Syria? Have you thought that through yet? Well, you don't care, but I do care. What's going to happen to them if Assad is removed? Who will protect them? I'll talk about that today.
They're going to be destroyed and annihilated, which is another gigantic reason they want this. And their blood will be on Trump's hands. As this proceeds, and as that goes further, their blood, their Christian martyr blood will be on his hands. I'm not saying they're all dyed in the wool true. I don't know. I don't know all of the different varieties of Christians in that region, but they identify as Christians, and their blood will be on Trump's hands. And the hands of these other people that have pushed him toward this.
But again, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'm presenting you a lot of emotional arguments and a lot of tangential arguments. But I want to go back to my primary case against, one, that Assad did it, because I believe there's no evidence that he did, nor would it make sense for him to have done it. And number two, this is not a sarin gas attack, as the morons in the media are reporting. What do they know? What do they know? These are college dropouts who majored in journalism or poli-sci, who don't even know the difference between sarin and phosgene. Now, they'll be looking it up now for MSNBC, so the freak on MSNBC can sound smart. But listen, freako, there's a big difference between sarin and phosgene. What you saw there with the poor children choking was a choking agent, not a nerve agent. If it had been a nerve agent, the first responders would have reacted. They all would have died, as a matter of fact. So it can't be a nerve agent. The West jumped to a conclusion before there was any investigation. By the way, folks, no independent person can access the site right now. So any analysis has to be done from somewhere else. Who is in the chain of custody of soil and plant samples that will be needed to determine which chemical was used? And by the way, Turkey claims to have done an autopsy of 3 victims and said that there were chemical warfare agents used. Really? And they concluded it was Assad? By the way, there's no autopsy on earth that can tell you that it was sarin gas. You have to compare tissue samples of the deceased with the chemical composition of Assad's destroyed weapons. I know that's a lot for you to follow, all you geniuses in the media. But in order to do a proper autopsy, you have to compare tissue samples of the deceased with the chemical composition of Assad's destroyed weapons. Where might that lead? So, my friends, I presented you the initial arguments on the following issue. One, my position is that it was not Assad who gassed his own people. And number two, it was not sarin gas. It was some kind of chlorine-based gas, such as phosgene, which is a choking agent. I'll be right back on the Savage Nation. Be here or be nowhere.
Okay, so if you want to hear the full report, you can find it online. Just key in, like, Michael Savage Syrian attack, false flag. You'll find the 14-minute one, which is what I just played, and then I think there's another one that's like over an hour where he gets into the full breakdown. So I'm just giving you the Cliff Note version, but that's a whole other aspect to this that obviously makes no sense whatsoever if we're to believe the mainstream media lies. So that's all I have for part 1. I'm way over on time here, and we will go to part 2 next. So God bless you. We'd like to welcome you back to our current event and Bible study for April 9th, 2017. The next report, continuing on, is entitled, "You're Crazy to Believe Everything the Mainstream Media Tells You About the Syrian Crisis." And let's go ahead and roll this video here.
There is absolutely no way that our government, the rulers of our government, the government-controlled media conglomerates, or the arms contractors are in collusion to make money off the backs of shocked and appalled American taxpayers, or the bodies of dead Syrians for that matter. And it's a good thing, too. Could you imagine how bad the world would be if the pockets of political leaders and media prostitutes were stuffed with dollars earned from war profiteering? Why, they might be inclined to, I don't know, start making things up or staging events in order to create helpful waves of national indignation.
So they're showing that same contrived scene of these white hat guys that are actually connected to the terrorists, the Muslim terrorists over there, in this staged, contrived scene of where they're like not moving. It's almost like a big photo op, you know, which it could truly, totally be a totally staged thing. It looks very staged.
Which would empower globalists to continue raining expensive military.
It's like the guy has one hand on a rock that's laying on the guy's leg and he's just sitting there. Like, oh wow, take a picture of me while I have my hand on this rock on the guy's leg, and I'm just going to sit here and pose for the cameras. This is total garbage.
Hardware over Middle Eastern desert communities. But we know that's not true. There's no collusion between arms dealers, weapons system contractors, politicians, or the trusted, award-winning journalists of media.
Go into greater detail. We see these beautiful pictures at night from the decks of these two U.S. Navy vessels in the Eastern Mediterranean. I am tempted to quote the great Leonard Cohen, I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons. And they are beautiful pictures.
So Brian Williams hails the beauty of the weapon of death. I mean, what kind of sick garbage is this?
Of fearsome armaments, making what is for them a brief flight over to this airfield.
This idea of follow the money is probably bogus anyway. Let's just assign that the category of
So understand, this whole video is based on sarcasm.
nothing to see here. So for all you who dine routinely at the table of mainstream media.
Okay, so here we have a graphic. M1 Abrams tank. Cost to taxpayers $6 million. Iraqi army that abandons the M1 tank to the ISIL forces. Cost to the U.S. taxpayers $25 billion. F-16 fighters sent to destroy M1 tank. Cost the U.S. taxpayers $18 million. Missile to blow up the captured M1 tank. Cost to the taxpayers $20,000 per missile. New tanks for the Iraqi army. Cost to the U.S. taxpayers billions and billions. Perpetual war in the Middle East, priceless.
As you digest their prepackaged delicacies, this short video is for you. Because it comes straight from the trusted mainstream source, CNN Money. Raytheon, the company that makes the Tomahawk missiles used in the airstrikes on Syria by the United States, is rising in early stock trading Friday. Investors seem to be betting President Trump's decision to retaliate against Syria after the chemical attack on Syrian citizens earlier this week may mean the Pentagon will need more Tomahawks. The Department of Defense asked for $2 billion over 5 years to buy 4,000 Tomahawks for the U.S. Navy in its fiscal 2017 budget last February. Nearly 6 Tomahawk cruise missiles were launched at military bases in Syria from U.S. warships in the Mediterranean Sea late Thursday. Raytheon wasn't the only defense stock rising Friday either. Lockheed Martin, which partners with Raytheon on the Javelin missile launcher system and also makes Hellfire missiles, gained nearly 1%. Defense stocks General Dynamics and Northrop Grumman also rallied Friday, a day when the broader market was flat due to a mixed U.S. jobs report. It's unclear whether President Trump and his Defense Secretary, James Mattis, will ask for a lot more money for Tomahawks once they officially submit a fiscal 2018 budget request. But Trump said in his preliminary budget blueprint last month that a broader increase in defense spending was needed. A sizable chunk of that was earmarked for upgrading warships, fighter planes, and missiles. And Republican Senator John McCain, who's also chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, said in a proposed defense budget that he published in late January, that it was critical to invest even more on advanced missile technology. So it should come as no surprise that defense stocks are among the top performers on Wall Street, not just on Friday, but for all of this year. The Spider S&P Aerospace and Defense ETF, XAR, has outperformed the S&P 500 so far this year. And shares of Boeing are up 14%, making it the second best stock in the Dow, trailing only Apple. So don't worry, America. Rest easy, world. Our constitutional republic is built on trust and a staunch faithfulness to justice. There's no collusion, warmongering, or profiteering. There's no media meddling or doctored narratives steering the public opinion to gain an insatiable desire to clamor about and beg their benevolent rulers for more war. There's no possible way that our trustworthy, morally superior politicians could ever do anything but the right thing.
So there's a whole other angle that I haven't presented that is very, very much in play as well. Now here we're going to go to the next one. Red alert, escalation, U.S. media calls for war with Russia. False flag attack has happened, and it's maneuvering us toward World War III, much to the globalists' delight. So we'll go ahead and roll this one.
All weekend long, it's going to be in your face that Russia did it. Russia did it. Russia killed babies now. All right, we're back live. It's 3 to 5. It's actually 5 o'clock right now, but we're going to keep going. And guess who's on the phone? Alex Jones. Alex, can you hear me?
Absolutely, my friend. I've got really grave news for everybody. I could see why Trump wanted to look strong to the communist Chinese dictator that was arriving last night. I could see why Trump could believe that maybe Syria launched a chemical attack, even though the Al-Qaeda/Al-Nusra ISIS rebels have been caught doing it multiple times before. I could see taking out a stockpile of supposed chemical weapons because Assad had agreed to do that 4 years ago if the U.S. military worked with the Russians to take out Al-Qaeda and ISIS so they didn't take over the country, something Hillary and Obama had been backing, as well as John McCain. But now, less than 24 hours in, what are we, about 22 hours in right now from what happened yesterday, our worst fears are coming true. The official mouthpiece of the globalists is undoubtedly CNN. MSNBC is the domestic mouthpiece, but CNN is the globalist mouthpiece internationally. Headline, did Russia try to destroy evidence? U.S. investigates a possible Russian role in chemical attack in Syria. And it just goes on and on and on, where we have U.S. war in Syria. It's prepared to do more. We've got the Russian warships moving in, blocking it, because, again, they've got major ties with Syria for 50 years. They're very close to Russia. They have gas pipelines coming in. I go back 4 years ago when our own military said, no, we're not backing Al-Qaeda, and basically welcomed Russia in to help them take out ISIS. And now, you made the point earlier during this live broadcast, that could this be a setup, how they invited Russia in, and are now basically less than 20-plus hours later going from no evidence that Syria launched a chemical attack. Looks like they blew up a chemical weapons depot that we know the ISIS people have had. We know Hillary, admittedly, that's Cy Hirsch, mainstream news. New Yorker magazine transferred those weapons to them, the rebels, not Syria, who was winning the civil war, who was pushing them out of the country into Iraq with our military's help. So they had no motive, as Ron Paul said a few days ago. But now, undoubtedly, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, they're all pushing for war with Russia, which is completely insane. So our worst fears, and the fears of Paul Joseph Watson and myself and Ron Paul and Rand Paul and you and McGreen and the rest of the crew, is now coming out.
Yeah, and the liberals are all up and on. They're all lockstep with this narrative. Did they have any, were they involved? Is there any evidence? They're never going to show us any evidence. But suddenly it'll come back and it'll say, well, we're highly confident that the Russians helped. Got to bomb the Russians now, Trump.
I had to mute that part out.
You going to listen to us, Trump? We were right about the other ones of the dead babies. And that's how they're going to do it, Jones. This is sickening watching this happen in real time.
Exactly, just like the dead babies, the incubators, 1990, all confirmed to be a PR firm, all confirmed mainstream news, CBS, ABC, to be fake. But they didn't tell you it was fake at the time. It took them 5 years to that it was a PR firm, a trained actress
Yeah.
Never even been delayed. And here's the Fox News headline: Russian warships steam towards U.S. destroyers that launched Syrian airstrikes. Say that they will shoot down the missiles that are fired. So again, ladies and gentlemen, this is how they do it. They tell Trump, you'll look strong. We'll say you're not a Russian agent if you do this. And now we don't have thermonuclear war and kill everyone on Earth. We're all Russian agents. Meanwhile, Susan Rice, Hillary Clinton, the Podesta brothers, they are all on the Russian payroll, the Communist Chinese payroll. This is just so sick. And it's a bunch of egomaniac, crazy people that get off on the threat of World War III that so many analysts say is serious. So here's your headline. I want to snip out this piece of this live transmission. I put it on Facebook, put it on YouTube with our great crew, and get it out to all the great listeners because this is so critical. Syrian conflict escalating towards full-out war with Russia. Or the headline, U.S. media calls for open war. U.S. media calls for war with Russia. Syria spirals out of control. Less than 24 hours later, we were looking at every angle, not rushing to judgment, not wanting to jump on Trump about this. But I got to tell you, it's not that Trump's the problem. It's the scum that surrounds him, the mentally ill demons that have set up.
That remains to be seen. Again, I'm not giving him a free pass on this, especially in light of what we're going to be looking at after this.
Al-Qaeda set up ISIS, our own government under the Clintons, and then again under Bush, and then again under Obama, accelerating the whole Middle East being turned over to these people, and the whole Arab Spring and all of it. And now they want to take out that Christian country. They want to take them out, and they want to open up Europe as a globalist plan to bring in even more Muslims and then make us submit to them, just like we saw the Stockholm attack today. This planet has Stockholm Syndrome to the New World Order.
There's another angle, bringing in more Muslims from Syria, having that be a gateway into Turkey, a free gateway. If we can take over and destabilize the country and insert whatever the New World Order wants as far as a puppet dictator, get Assad out of there, we can have the free flow of the most radical elements of Islam coming through there into Turkey, into Europe. That's another angle why they want to do this.
Stockholm Syndrome to the globalists, Stockholm Syndrome to the Islamicists. And the good news is the world's awakening to globalism. They may have a bunch of zombies drinking the Kool-Aid, but it's coming to an end. But I can feel the energy level. I have been crazed all day because the world is in danger. When I go to sleep tonight, I am legitimately worried about dying in my sleep when 50 megaton bombs detonate over my house. Crazy governments have gone to war and tens of millions died per war last century. 50-something million died in World War II. And now we're sitting here again believing nuclear war is impossible when every top analyst says we're the closest to it we've ever been. And that's why I'm upset by the decadence and the left wanting war and the right wing wanting war and then the populists that just want a future for our kids. We're called the extremists.
Yeah, and Alex, all these wars started with a false flag. Every single one of them. World War II, false flag. Vietnam War, false flag. Korean War, false flag. Right. It's all false flag. The Gulf War I, Gulf War II. It's all about deceiving the people to get them to fight with each other. And I don't know why people can't see this.
And this is not the Cold War. This is not the Soviet Union. Donald Trump said he wanted to work with the Russians to help defeat ISIS. And we're seeing a complete turnaround right now.
Now ISIS is going to get to run around scot-free.
Yeah. That's
and ISIS is endorsing what happened. I want to make this key point.
Yeah.
This is so important that you guys jump back in and I'm going to go off here and you take more calls. This snippet needs to be put up right now as soon as we can.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, our InfoWars crew is overworked, working as hard as we can, trying to expand the operation in the face of the globalists because everything you do, everything we do right now is so critical. Our government, at the highest levels, allied with radical Islam. Trump claims he wants to stop that. Trump claims he wants peace. But he's been bullied and positioned into this. And now you see it's not just one strike. They want full-out war, and they want war with Russia. This is the mental illness we're facing. So we have to get this information out to everybody. We have to point out that, again, this is not making our world safer. It's making it more unstable. And I got to say, Ron Paul, Paul Watson, everybody that came out of the gate said this was a horrible idea. I said it was a horrible idea 2 days ago before it happened. I just try to analyze what's happening. But bottom line, this is only turning to crap. This is unraveling so incredibly quick. And I understand it's all a big stunt to basically show off to the communist Chinese how powerful we are. but there's not going to be a planet nuclear war with the Russians kicks off. So that's what's happening. This is escalating, and our MSM is now calling for war with Russia and trying to claim they launched chemical attacks when it's our own elite on record that started the Arab Spring and started the overthrow of Syria, just like they did the elected government of Ukraine, and they're the ones that are to blame for all of it. The New World Order, the whole 9 yards. We'll obviously have live events this weekend and right through Sunday. Everybody out there needs to spread the word, because I've gone from saying let's wait and see on this for the first 20-something hours to now seeing all the major news channels saying let's go to war with Russia. These people are insane, and they must be stopped. Back to the live crew.
All right, thank you. That was Alex Jones calling in. Wild horses can't drag him away, folks. He is legitimately concerned about what's going on. He's legitimately pissed off watching, because we know it's a bunch of BS of the Syrian attack. We know it's total horse manure that Assad bombed his people. And they're trying to now say it's the Russians. Now you got CNN, and they're going to put this out all weekend.
Absolutely.
All weekend long, it's going to be in your face that Russia did it. Russia did it. Russia killed babies now.
Yep.
What are you going to do about it? You going to get on the Trump train? You going to go back? You going to get on with McCain and Lindsey Graham and Fareed Zakaria and everybody else that wants to go bomb Russia and have a war with Russia? That'll make everything great, won't it? Based on a lie. All based on a lie.
Okay, so we have that. That's another angle. And here's another one. And I'm trying to do this so you have as much confirmation on this as you could possibly have.
Hi, this is Dave Hodges of the Common Sense Show, and we're the show that's freeing America, one enslaved mind at a time, and we've got a lot of unfreeing to do, and hopefully we can reach multiple minds, because the situation is grim, it's critical, and Americans need to forget our petty differences and begin to unite en masse, because what's happening in Syria is going to be coming here. That'll be another topic for another time. But in the interim, I'd like to discuss with you what's happened with President Trump. I still have a fond affection for the man because I know he didn't lie through the campaign, but somehow I believe the forces of evil have gotten to Donald Trump and forcing him to act like a neocon. Yes, I know no one makes you do anything in life, but we don't know all the circumstances. But there are advantages to him becoming a neocon. Now, a neocon is someone that wishes to push the American empire on people. We are preparing to invade Syria as a prelude to invading Iran. This was the plan in 2013 when Obama failed, in part because members of the independent media pushed back and exposed the chemical weapons attack in Syria as a false flag by the CIA through their Al-Qaeda operatives. Well, here we are 4 years later with the same exact scenario. The one thing that you should notice about the globalists is they repeat the same playbook plays all the time. They don't vary often. And I remember hearing Alex Jones say at one point, I know what the globalists are going to do next because I got their playbook. Alex, I know exactly what you meant because I feel the same way. Anyone who works in this long enough can really begin to predict what's coming next. Now, does Donald Trump benefit from his actions with this unwarranted attack which honored a false flag event in Syria? Yes. Have you noticed what's happened in the media? It's crickets chirping. We're not hearing this campaign member of Trump talk to a Russian. This person chew Russian bubblegum. Donald Trump is the errand boy for Vladimir Putin. We're not hearing this stuff in the media. The last 3 days, the media has totally backed off of Donald Trump. And we're looking at a situation now where the media is supporting him. Another advantage to becoming a neocon, the world leaders who are supporting the growth of globalism and the New World Order are also praising Donald Trump. Isn't that interesting? The world leaders are the ones criticized him. Nancy Pelosi, John McCain, the loony McCain, praising Donald Trump for his actions. There are some advantages there. Trump has gone from becoming the most vilified president in the first 100 days to where now he's receiving very solid support. And it's unfortunate for him that this binge into being a neocon overshadowed the fact that Gorsuch was confirmed and Trump won a big victory, but it's dwarfed by what's going on inside of Syria. Syria has so many other geopolitical implications. We're going to cover those in another broadcast. But Donald Trump is enjoying the benefits of being a neocon. He has now managed to coalesce the globalist forces, the deep state, and the intelligence community that exists on the surface, and they all support him. Life is good for Donald being a neocon. It's not going to be good for your children when they're drafted to fight and become slaughterhouse meat in the next war. Well, that's it for the Common Sense Show. Thanks so much for joining.
Okay, so we have Dave Hodges' take on that. Here's the next one. Is Donald Trump now paying his penance to the Rothschilds? Okay, so this is a very interesting, also another very, very interesting look at this. And some information I wasn't fully aware of. It's from Right Wing News.
Your Newswire reports that the Rothschilds brought out Donald Trump decades ago, and now he's just repaying the debts that he owes them. Interesting. It's not the first time I've heard that. There's a little bit more substance to these claims than I've heard in the past. Still not a lot, but a good amount. The author writes, let that sink in. Make no mistake, the U.S. presidential election was rigged. We know that, even before the first ballot was cast. Rothschilds were up to their old tricks, funding both sides of the war in order to fuel chaos, derive maximum profit, and ensure they retain ultimate influence regardless of, who emerges in the New World Order. It's nothing they haven't been doing for the last 300-400 years. So it says, everybody knows Hillary Clinton was the establishment's candidate of choice, backed by the Rothschilds and the New World Order. But what is less known is that Donald Trump is also a Rothschild creation and actor, playing a part in a great sham that is the New World Order's fake politics, designed to keep control of the people in this supposedly democratic society. And there's a couple interesting tweets. One from Laura Ingraham. Of course, McCain's happy, missiles are flying. Paul Joseph Watson saying that, if there's one area...
So Laura Ingraham says missiles flying, Rubio's happy, McCain's ecstatic, Hillary's on board, a complete policy change in 48 hours. And Laura Ingraham is like, I've heard her, she's like very, very pro-Trump. But again, she's pointing out a complete policy 180-degree change in 48-hour period.
Trump's going to screw up. It's going to be his foreign policy. Don't know that.
So that's Paul Joseph Watson. One area that he had predicted this, one area that he would mess up, it would be foreign policy. Half of his advisors are CFR globalists, Council on Foreign Relations, and that swamp was not drained. And these are people he's put around him. So you have to ask yourself the question, is he that naive? Is he that, I don't know, uneducated? I'm trying to be nice here. Where he would surround himself by sharks, by people that are clearly in the Illuminati, that have the Illuminati agenda in the forefront of their thought patterns. CFR, Council on Foreign Relations. Okay, an organization that is all about implementing the New World Order agenda. He surrounded himself with them, and that's just one aspect of it. So, it does not look like he is innocent at all regarding that. It just doesn't look good.
I disagree there. Although he brings up an interesting point, and some of you may know this, some of you may not. When he talks about the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, for those that are not aware, and there's many that aren't, so forgive me those who are. To anyone who's not aware of what the Council on Foreign Relations is, let me give you the 30-second Cliff Notes version. Essentially, I want to say the year was 1912, 1914, something like that. It was J.P. Morgan Chase, in conjunction with the Rockefeller was there was a Warburg there, and I want to say one of the other from the 13 big families was there, formed a front group that essentially was tasked with figuring out, and this was a JP Morgan venture, figure out how many newspapers they would need to buy, they being, the elite families of the world, in order to control the entire narrative in the United States. It was determined that they needed to buy 25 papers. They bought those papers, instituted, policies in place in order to basically run the narrative. Here we are, 100 years later in this past election.
And see, back then, they didn't have to worry about, the mainstream television type thing. If you bought the newspapers, you're going to control the narrative, you're going to control the news outflow, and that's why they targeted newspapers back in that time period.
And I think we saw the culmination of 100 years of work at that. That group, which had its first president was J.P. Morgan's attorney, if I recall correctly, came to call itself the Council on Foreign Relations. So it is very concerning that a guy who ran, that guy being Trump, on such an anti-globalist platform, has guys like Munchin, Soros Puppet, and many other CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, people in his cabinet, some of which are war hawks. Again, he's not supposed to be a war hawk. So there's a lot of contradictory information out there, and a lot of the, what I call Trumpettes, the most ignorant of them all, particularly the one that put in the comments, you should just do whatever your president says. Because that's worked out so well in history when people just follow blindly and don't ask questions. That's never led to anything bad, right? Whoever that person was, I suggest you might want to pick up a history book. Unbelievable, some folks. Paul Joseph Watson says, never been more disappointed to be right. Can't say I'm not right there with you.
Now, again, because that he had predicted that if there was one area that he was really going to mess up bad, it was going to be foreign policy. And that's why he said, I've never been more disappointed to be right.
On that particular issue, anyway. During the election, political analysts said that Trump's tilt for the presidency had been 30 years in the making, going all the way back to when members of the Rothschild family saved him from bankruptcy and took him under their wing. I don't have anything to quantify that, and there's certainly nothing provided here, but it is interesting perspective. They recognize his potential as a man of use and as a colorful front man for a secretive organization that remains unnamed, that prefers to keep itself in the shadows. So this is almost as quality of writing as the Washington Post, but at the same time, these days just about anything is possible. So it's worth at least considering and putting forth for you to consider in your calculus as far as what may be going on. Because if there's anything that we can all agree on, it's that the mainstream media is lying. Whether they're just outright lying or telling us that much of the truth, they're lying. But it talks about how Trump built his wealth, and interestingly enough, how a lot of it began with, and I'm sure this can be documented, Resorts International, which was a CIA front for some time, and then ultimately was turned over to Meyer Lansky, mobster, Rosenbaum.
I don't know if he's going to read this paragraph, but it says in 1987, Donald Trump purchased his first casino interest when he acquired 93% of the shares in this Resorts International. Resorts International has a sordid history which began in the early 1950s when it was involved in a CIA and Mossad. Now remember that, Mossad, which is Israeli intelligence, the main Israeli intelligence apparatus front company, which had been established for the purpose of money laundering. Now this is Resorts International, of money laundering the profits from drug trafficking, gambling, and other illegal activities. Okay, so in 1987, Donald Trump purchased his first casino interest when he acquired 93% of the shares in this Resorts International. So this sounds really, really, really bad to me.
Hitchcock, David Rockefeller, and one Rothschild.
So these were the principal investors in Resorts International. This is from the Spotlight newspaper, October 30th, 1970. The principal investors initially were Meyer Lansky, huge mob guy, Tibor Rosenbaum, William Mellon Hitchcock, David Rockefeller, and one Baron Edmund D. Rothschild. high-level Illuminati. I know for certain Rockefeller, Rothschild, and Lansky all in that synagogue of Satan Jew type group. Now, I'm not calling all Jews synagogue of Satan. I'm saying the Bible talks about in Revelation that they call themselves Jews, but they're of the synagogue of Satan. These are like people of the Kabbalist, of the Christ-hating, evil Jewish sects that practice the Kabbalah and are typically high-level occultists.
Certainly some interesting connections there. And I'm sure there's a paper trail for all of that. So, again, just definitely things to keep in mind. I'm not saying he is a globalist puppet. I'm certainly not saying he's not. I'm saying that, again, as an attorney, I like to get as many facts as I can and not jump on the first story.
It says here in 1987, upon the death of longtime CIA frontman James Crosby, the nominal head of Resorts International, up-and-coming young real estate tycoon Donald Trump stepped in to the picture and bought up Crosby's interest in the gambling empire. Trump soon became a household name, and his colorful personality and his insistence upon naming a variety of luxury hotels, apartment houses, and other commercial ventures after himself. But while the name Trump appeared in the headlines, the names of the real movers behind the Resorts International, being Rockefeller and Rothschild, remained hidden from public view. This is how they always do things. They don't ever want to be the front man typically. They want to be behind the scenes. They want to be the puppet master behind the scenes. And then it says, after quickly expanding the reach of Resorts International to Atlantic City in the final years of the 1980s, Donald Trump found himself in a financial trouble as the real estate market in New York tanked. The 3 casinos in Atlantic City, like other Trump assets, were under threat from lenders. It was only with the assistance of the assurance of Wilbur L. Ross Jr., senior managing director of the Rothschild Inc., that Trump was allowed to keep the casinos and rebuild his threatened empire. I mean, these guys, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, money's no object. They create it out of thin air. Okay, they literally decide the price of gold and silver every day. The Rothschilds in London. So they've been controlling the banking empire since, what is it, the 1700s? The Rothschilds alone. So they can create money out of thin air, especially when you have fiat currency, that you just print money out of thin air with no real metal backing it. And they could easily get Donald Trump out of whatever mess he was in because they have that power.
But this definitely raises some interesting questions, as after quickly expanding the reach of resorts international to Atlantic City in the final years of the 80s, Trump found himself once again in financial trouble, which most of us are familiar with. The 3 casinos in Atlantic City, like other Trump assets, were under threat from lenders, so it was only with the assurances of Wilbur Ross, who happens to be the senior managing director of Rothschild Inc. Very interesting note there. Same, as it mentions here, Wilbur Ross, that is still Jacob Rothschild's right-hand man, and came out very much in vocal support of Trump in March of 2016. I do recall that. So other things that are worthy of note here as far as how this all relates to what we're seeing. In another move to fill out his economic team, we know that Steve Mnuchin is Treasury Secretary, also former Goldman Sachs boy, also former George Soros puppet. So a lot of the same infected crowd. And again, I'm speaking mainly to the Trumpettes that think the man can do no wrong. There is a lot of evil surrounding that man. I'm not saying that he's part of it, but it's something that some of you may want to...
So, I mean, he's skipping over a lot of stuff here. Wilbur L. Ross, still Jacob Rothschild's right-hand man, came out in support of Donald Trump. And he is currently Donald Trump's Secretary of Commerce. Oh, boy. This is the Rothschild's right-hand man. And he's Donald Trump's Secretary of Commerce. That's really, really bad. Trump also nominated Steve Mnuchin to be a Treasury Secretary. That is the same Steve Mnuchin who spent 17 years working at Goldman Sachs, an investment firm that has produced multiple Secretaries of Treasury before taking the helm of Trump's fundraising operation this year. Mnuchin also worked with the man who broke the Bank of England, billionaire globalist George Soros. Hired him in 2003 to start a new business, Dune Capital, which focused on the buying of risky debt. If the links aren't obvious enough, consider the fact that Jacob Rothschild's son, Nate Rothschild, even dated Ivanka Trump. Oh man, this is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Open your eyes to. Both candidates in the election were controlled by the globalist powers that be. Not so sure on that, but you had Hillary Clinton sacrificing chickens and begging in emails to pay her penance to the Rothschilds. Meanwhile, Trump appears to have been bought long ago. He was made by the Rothschilds. He's paying his penance by appointing senior Rothschild men to key posts in his administration, and is now playing the globalist game. Well,
so all the stuff about how he got in there and apparently started making these horrific choices right off the bat regarding who he was surrounding himself with, who he was putting in his cabinet, all of that wasn't because he was stupid. It was because it was payback time. All of that appears to be by design, because the people that he's giving these posts to have deep ties to him going way back, and they're tied to the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, which are basically synonymous with Satan incarnate.
if there's one thing that can be said, he's definitely playing a globalist game right now. One that is very scary, and that was, I guess, the other point that I alluded to earlier today, where potentially that was one of the ones where somebody referred to me as a sellout. And call me a sellout all you like. I prefer the scenarios where nobody dies, American or otherwise. Call me old-fashioned that way. I'm not against it. Certainly not against war. Not even within this country, if need be. But at the same time, when there are opportunities to avoid and think, I think they're certainly the more prudent way to go, more often than not. Either way, very correctly points out that American citizens didn't really have a choice in this election. The New World Order had been working behind the scenes for decades, creating actors that played the roles. It's also been hypothesized by many that one of the reasons that they selected Trump was to oversee the bankrupting of the United States of America. There's probably no better person on the planet Earth equipped to do it than him. So there's certainly an argument to be made there. So
Okay, so along those lines, I've heard theories out there which would make sense. If he did get in, one of the ways that he could be used would be the bankrupting of America, meaning, okay, you conservatives, you Christians, you pro-Second Amendment people, all you people that voted for Trump, we're going to give you got what you wanted. Then they pull the plug on the fiat currency. They launch multiple terror attacks. They collapse the economy. They launch all kind of plagues. They greenlight all the Muslim terror cells on ourselves. They greenlight La Raza. They do all of these things that they could do that we have talked about over and over again. They blow a whole bunch of dams. They create all kind of weather warfare. They create earthquakes. Let's say they do all at once, and they blame it all on Trump, as opposed to doing it while Obama was in office, or even Hillary was in office, where we could say, look what they got us, look what Hillary got us, look what Obama got us. No, they can blame the golden boy of the conservative movement that had probably a larger outpouring of support than any president that I've known in my lifetime. And I'm saying that because I believe a ton of what the support base that he had was absolutely suppressed as far as the true numbers about, the voting and things of this nature. We discussed that quite a bit. And they could blame it on Trump. So that would be another angle to consider.
Hard to tell exactly what's going on. I think we're going to know sooner before later. One thing that I will mention before closing that I'm not hearing anything about in the news, which I would encourage each of you to look into. I've done a couple videos and posts on it, and that is even Trump's own officials have more or less conceded to the fact that better chance of Frosty the Snowman hanging out in hell for a week on a vacation than we are of getting a new funding resolution passed before April 28th. There's only 5, 6, 7 legislative days between now and then. I don't think there's that many, maybe 5 or 6. So that means government's going to shut down. And with that, probably going to see a lot of economic turmoil. And that's where I think maybe some of these questions will start to get answered, as some of these risque people will begin to show their true colors. Either way, it's still very early to tell. Still a lot of cards left to play. Still only not even 90 days into this administration yet. But There's plenty to be alarmed about. There's plenty for the people that thought that they were waking up to another sunny or a brand new morning like under Reagan. Plenty of time for those people to come back down to reality. We're going to face much tougher times before things get better. If you have not seen the video on the government shutdown, I suggest you watch it. There is virtually zero opinion in that, and that is just straight arithmetic.
Okay, so we have that angle now as well, and he's an attorney, right-wing news. I think he puts out some good, just seemingly unbiased, straightforward reporting on a lot. So what I'm trying to do is give you a lot of takes on this, coming at this from different angles, but all pointing, kind of in the same direction. So we're getting really the big picture here. And this is going to be a very, very sobering wake-up call for a lot of people regarding this, because obviously that last report be very, very hard to look at Trump's decision since he's been in office as innocent regarding who he surrounded himself with. And now this current, who would the Rothschilds want war? They're the ones that originally profiteered. War is what made them. The Napoleonic War is the original thing that actually made the Rothschilds the leading banking family on planet Earth. You can research that. The 5 sons of Rothschild, the original Rothschild, they lived in a Jewish ghetto, and he sent out his 5 sons into the major cities in Europe to become bankers, and essentially they funded both sides of the Napoleonic War, and this is where they came to prominence, and this is where they started controlling the banking regarding the major banking for the whole world. This is where they came into power, and they've been there ever since, from the 1700s. So it'd be hard to view Trump as innocent in light of what we just discussed. I hate to bring this out, but it's becoming more and more obvious as things go by, and we're going to even give you more confirmation in the next part. So we're going to end part 2 here and go to more sobering information in part 3 next. We'd like to welcome you back to part 3 of our current event and Bible study for April 9th, 2017. This just broke on Drudge. This is their main headline. Anymore, I have to stop the teachings and scan the current event horizon to see if there's anything more applicable I need to add in on a given study, as the information is typically breaking so fast and there's so much of it. Russia and Iran pledged to hit back against further Syria strikes as they blast the U.S. for crossing red lines. So we're really seeing this delineation. We're really seeing the battle lines drawn and countries coalescing into allies, I guess, to one another. Now you have Iran and Russia giving a mutual warning to the United States. The command center for the two countries and allied groups released a joint statement today saying they would respond to future breaches of red lines with force. Russia and Iran released a joint statement promising to respond to the U.S. aggression. The statement read, quote, "What America waged in an aggression on Syria is a crossing of red lines. From now on, we will respond with force to any aggressor or any breach of red lines from whoever it is, and America knows our ability to respond well," end of quote. So, literally, if Trump does one more thing like this, and he says he's got no problem doing it, we literally could be in World War III, on our way to the tribulation. Now, I understand if that's God's will, that's God's will. We know that it's going to happen eventually. We know World War III, which is going to lead us into the tribulation period most likely, is going to happen. But wouldn't it be ironic if Trump was the one, after we've had all of these wicked people, overtly wicked presidents in office, from the Bushes to the Clintons, to Bill Clinton to Obama, all of them, Wouldn't it be ironic if Trump was the one that led us into the World War III, which is going to produce the Antichrist and false prophet that's most likely going to come as men of peace, or at least appear that way from the beginning. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani condemned the flagrant U.S. aggression on Syria, how he said it, following the missile strike on a Syrian airbase in response to a suspected chemical attack by the Syrian government on innocent civilians. The Iranian leader, a key ally of Syria's Bashar al-Assad, called yesterday for an impartial investigation into the chemical attack that killed at least 70 people. If they get that investigation, they're going to find out that the information is bogus. Obviously, we've already went over how bogus it is. And if that investigation ever comes about, you know that will be suppressed by the mainstream media. Next report, and it just gets worse and worse regarding Trump and his administration and his family members. Wagging the dog, Jared Kushner style. Some may ask why I wanted Kushner gone. Simple. His main business partner is George Soros. Need I say more? Now, we've already talked in the previous study how Donald Trump is linked with George Soros. Now we're going to talk about his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And this gets even worse. Anyone who has followed American foreign policy for any length of time is very familiar with the term wag the dog. And anyone who has followed President Trump's abandonment of his campaign pledge of not being the world's policeman is intimately familiar with the anti-American policies of Jared Kushner. The combination of the two have brought the U.S. to the brink of World War III against Russia, China, and North Korea. Now remember, the day before all this happened, the day before Trump ordered these missile strikes, Bannon stepped down and Kushner pretty much stepped in, and we're going to look at that. And that's probably no coincidence either. Trump's daughter may not need a divorce, but Trump certainly does from Kushner, and it did not involve kicking Bannon to the curb. The wrong dog got kicked. Traitor Kushner needs to go. Already, because of Kushner's influence, we have seen Trump lose the support of people like Paul Joseph Watson and Michael Savage, among other notables. Kushner is pure poison, and he is the straw that will stir the drink called World War III. The United States has a vested interest in protecting Israel, both from a geopolitical standpoint and a moral standpoint. However, that does not mean that we bend to every Israeli desire and allow their operatives, such as Kushner, to force the White House to pursue reckless policies which are not in the national security interest of the United States and in the interest and safety of the American people. Now, when we talk about Israeli desire, we're talking about the evil synagogue of Satan, Talmud-loving, Kabbalist, Illuminati, so-called synagogue of Satan Jews. That's who we're in reference to here. I'm not talking about just the Jews in general. So let's separate the two. Okay? We'll be talking about that more. The United States has a okay, hold on, I already read that. Okay, all things considered, Israel is an ally, but they are not our masters. And Kushner is a foreign operative who is working against the interests of the United States, and he is obviously having undue influence on President Trump. And for whatever reason, Trump has allowed himself to be manipulated into a war posture when it was not necessary. And this is stuff that Trump was tweeting about and screaming about, like, 2 to 3 years ago, about how we don't need to be doing this regarding Syria. They read you those tweets, and in the one interview that I played, those tweets were read. So long as Kushner remains in the White House, I think unspoken opponents to the attacks in Syria, such as Ron Paul, are in extreme danger. I guess that means he thinks they're in danger of assassination? I don't know how bad it's going to get. I mean, Michael Savage, what he said was, if you see these people starting to be, like, if they start to all of a sudden die, I mean, man, it's on. It's that will be, I don't know, I want to say the ultimate red flag, but I'll tell you, if you start to see that, know that they're probably planning on rounding up the red list. If you start seeing alternative media go down and silenced and assassinated, and they're not going to come out and say, oh, well, he took a bullet in the head. They're going to say, oh, he died at something, he had a heart attack or something. Or they've got all these weapons that can simulate this stuff. But they'll just blatantly lie about it. You see these people that are in the know, and see now it's even a smaller percentage, because you've got all these people, like the one guy said, they called them the Trumpettes, like the trumpets. You've got you've got the Democratic base, and you've got the liberal base, you've got the millennials, and you've got the Black Lives Matter, and you've got the liberals and the Muslims and these types of people, and the La Razas and the illegal aliens, and you've got a lot of them already in that other camp, okay, that are against Trump, that are against conservatives. But now you've got a huge part of the conservative base that have been on board the, quote, Trump train, that are refusing to acknowledge that what Trump did was evil, and refusing to point it out. What does that do? It further isolates this very, very now small percentage of America that is actually seeing clearly what is going on here. Like I said, when I saw that thing in the Drudge Report where he had a 65% and went up to 66% approval on polling on Drudge, and those are the people that should be in the know, those should be our people that should be much more educated than the average American, I knew that was huge trouble. If they stay in that mindset, what it is going to do is just absolutely segregate and divide those that actually are really looking at this clearly, and they're going to be much more easy targets for the New World Order, because there's going to be less of us. The Ron Pauls, the Michael Savages, these people that are actually, and then the other people in alternative media, the ones that are looking at this clearly, the ones that are presenting this narrative that I'm presenting to you today. If these other people that have supported Trump do not get on board, they're going to turn against us. They may have already done that. I don't know. They may think Trump can do no wrong. Then they're going to go after the people really in the know. We're going to be isolated even more. I'm not saying God isn't bigger than all of that. I'm not scared about this. I'm just saying it's a very, very bad turn of events. Whereas if you had Hillary in office, and I'm not saying I wanted her in office, okay, I beg God not for that to happen. She's pure evil. But had she been in, and had she done this, what Trump did, you wouldn't have this. You would still have the conservative base that would have supported Trump saying, no, Hillary's evil, look at her, look what she's done. No. Maybe you'd have a few that would have approved of it, but not 65%. Because most of the people that go up on the Drudge Report are not liberals. That's not where they go to get their news. They go to like the Huffington Post and CNN and all of the Rachel Maddow, the lesbian Rachel Maddow, these types of news outlets, the mainstream ones. That's where they get their news from. So I'm telling you, this is not good. I would pray about this. Pray that people get their eyes opened. And if the alternative media that is pointing all of this out is demonized and cut off and assassinated, there will be no one left to point out the truth in this country. Not on any kind of large scale basis like the alternative media has been able to do. It will be over, essentially. Maybe this was their plan all along. Maybe it was. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying maybe, though. It's sure looking like it may work out to their favor. And I mean Satan's favor. The way it's going. All right, let's go further here. So long as Kushner remains in the White House, I think outspoken opponents to the attacks in Syria, such as Ron Paul, are in extreme danger. Why do I believe this? Because I have two trusted, highly credible sources, and this is Dave Hodges, that tell me that Kushner works for Mossad. He does. We're going to prove that, okay? and that Israel desperately wants war with Syria in order to eliminate the Syrian threat. With Syria out of the way, the Iranian crisis from an Israeli perspective becomes more manageable, and this also reduces the threat of Israel being caught in a two-front war. Part of me empathizes with the viewpoints as Israeli lives under constant threat of annihilation. However, a war with Syria brings Russia into the equation, and things could spin out of control very, very quickly. Now, you could say, why would Israel want all this when they know that Russia would... You know what? The people at the top, like at the top of the food chain, like the Rothschilds, like the Rockefellers, who are, say they're Jews, who do they serve? They serve Satan. Do you really think they have any real love for their own people? No, I don't believe that. They serve Satan. What does Satan want to do? Kill, steal, and destroy. If they're going to do their father's bidding, they don't care. They don't care about the annihilation of their own country. They don't. They care about doing Satan's will. And his will is for everybody to die. And the Jews would be at the top of his list. Because if he could wipe out the Jews, how could the book of Revelation be fulfilled in the tribulation period? How could that be? There's so many things that are dependent upon the Jews in the book of Revelation. I mean, they give down to the 12 tribes. Well, that's exactly why he tried to wipe out humanity prior to the flood. Genesis 6. Because if he could snuff out humanity and destroy the DNA, to corrupt the DNA of mankind, how could the rest of how could the prophecies be fulfilled? How could Jesus Christ come back to redeem mankind if all humanity would have been wiped out at the flood? He almost pulled it off. Save Noah and the 8 people on the ark. They basically had to hit the reset button, and the animals on the ark. So it's similar to that. Going further, however, a war with Syria brings Russia into the equation. Things could spin out of control very quickly. Therefore, both my sources and I believe that a war in Syria is not in our country's best interest. I've been saying that ever since it happened. I mean, ever since we had these problems there. And if we go to war, we are following the dictates of the globalists and their neocon minions. They have been trying to pull us into war there for a long time now. It's one of the last domino pieces that has to fall in the Middle East in order to get World War III kicked off. Let's go further. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, this is not a rumor, this is true. He owns, and we're going to see he owned it, and now supposedly it was transferred out of his name into his brother's name in order to not have any conflicts of interest. Just like Trump divested himself of his business interests in order to become president. Okay. Well, he owned 666 Fifth Avenue, the building at 666 Fifth Avenue in New York City that houses Lucent, aka Lucifer Technology, which I've reported on over and over. Their symbol is basically the snake eating its own tail. Lucent Technology, which stands for Lucifer, which is the company dedicated to making the implantable RFID chips, which will probably end up being the mark of the beast. Yeah, so it only gets funner and funner in this study. I know that wasn't proper English, but yeah, gooder and gooder, I'm sorry. Yeah, he does. The Kushner companies purchased in 2007 the 666 Fifth Avenue, a aluminum-clad office tower in Midtown Manhattan. If you watch the video, you can literally see where they walk in to the 666 building, and it says 666 in big, they look like brass letters to me, in black brass numbers, I'm sorry. Right at the front when you go in, on 3 sides, 666. Yep. He purchased it in 2007 for a record price of $1.8 billion, and is considered a classic example of reckless underwriting. Now, so many times, these companies, as I've reported in the past, will buy these locations and pay whatever price they say, literally because of the number on the building. I know there was a guy that did a tour in the Prophecy Club, and he had a whole like, his whole talk was about that, was on how there are certain companies that will buy properties at certain locations literally because of the 666 address. Because to an occultist, that is a big deal. That may mean the difference between Satan's blessing and them not getting the blessing for that wicked business venture they're going to go into. So they purchased this for a record price of $1.8 billion, which was considered a classic example of reckless underwriting. The transaction was so highly leveraged that the cash flow from the rents amounted to only 65% of the debt service. So it was a horrible, on paper, investment. But then again, when you got guys like Rockefeller and the Rothschilds who can literally print money out of thin air, who have funded you, okay, who are behind you, you don't really worry. If they tell you to do it, you don't really worry about the venture failing, because they've got, their pockets are beyond deep. They're almost like infinite. When you can print it out of thin air, it's kind of infinite. You do as you're told. Wait, it gets better. Jared Kushner's purchasing of the 666 Fifth Avenue building in New York City. Now, remember, this is Trump's son-in-law that's married to his daughter, Ivanka, Jared Kushner, who is a Jew, who is a, as we're going to see, I believe, a Sabbatean, I don't know. He's in the Kabbalah. He's in a very, very, very hardcore Kabbalist sect of the Jews. Again, this is not about demonizing the Jews. We know in the book of Zechariah that according to the tribulation, near the end of the tribulation, that the Bible says that God is going to try the Jews that are basically in Israel, and he is going to bring them through the fire and try them as silver is tried, and 1/3 of them are going to be saved, according to the book of Zechariah. And they're going to look upon whom the one they have pierced, meaning Jesus Christ, and they're going to mourn for him as one would mourn for their only begotten son, meaning the Jews are finally collectively going to get their eyes open after 2,000 years and realize what they did at the cross when the Jews collectively cried out and said, "Crucify Jesus, give us Barabbas the murderer, let Jesus' blood be upon us and our children," which literally cursed their whole lineage up until now. That's why the Bible says that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. I've done whole teachings on this. Just key in affliction Jews. You'll see it. Biblical reason for the affliction of the Jews. It's not against the Jews. It's not against the Jews at all. I'm stating biblical facts. I take a balanced look, hopefully at all biblical subjects. Okay, so I'm not like Hagee that says that the Jews don't even to be saved because of the blood that runs through their veins, and ethnic salvation is what he believes in. They're all saved just because they're Jews. And I'm also not going to be like Tex Mars and blame them for all the wickedness and evil in the world and say the Jews are behind everything. You know what? When it comes down to it, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of moving parts in the New World Order. There's a lot of moving parts in the Illuminati. Are a majority of the Illuminati families, quote, of the Jewish lineage? Yeah, they are. The Rothschilds being at the top. You got the Rockefellers and others, okay. But does that mean they're the only source? What about the Pope? What about the Catholic Church? Okay, there's a lot of people who believe they're responsible just for everything. And then there's a lot of people who believe this or that or this or that. You know what? It's a big satanic effort. And there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of different organizations in Satan's kingdom, and they're all doing their part, and some of them are higher ranking than others. And some of them play a bigger part than others, obviously. But I'm not going to just blame it on one part. I'm going to take, okay, let's look at the big picture here. So, Jared Kushner's purchasing of the 666 Fifth Avenue building in New York City in connection to Lucent Technologies, a RFID chip manufacturer. These are implantable radio frequency identifier chips that could be essentially, this could literally be the mark of the beast that they're building. Is very disturbing, this connection. His brother, Joshua Kushner, owns two health companies, one named Oscar These startups are listed under the health insurance options under the Obamacare. One of these companies' missions is to microchip their clients. This is all too weird given Jared Kushner's role in foreign policy and the revising of Obamacare. Now, this is a video from a guy that I believe would be one of those guys that would blame the Jews for everything. Okay, but he has some good points to make, so I'm going to just play selective clips of this particular interview here.
Found Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Donald Trump, is now owner of the building in New York on Fifth Avenue. That's the address is 666. And housed in this building is a company, Lucid
Now,
Technologies.
he's showing headlines in the background, and it's literally a live CNN feed that says son-in-law, Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to tackle the Middle East peace negotiations, and primarily his role with Israel. You're going to see he's linked to Mossad, Israel, and we're going to be looking at that in depth, okay? Very, very, very disturbing connections.
Technology that is now basically turned into Nokia. But they're working on the FRID chip.
He means RFID, not FRID. RFID, radio frequency identifier. So when you see FRID, just understand he's saying it the wrong way.
Isn't it interesting that the FRID chip is being developed in a building? The address is 666. Now, it used to be the big number 666 used to be on the outside of the building. They recently...
So now there's all these videos out saying that Jared Kushner is the Antichrist. He's the Damon Omen 2 of the Omen. He is... I mean, I'm looking at these videos. 666, I'm convinced Jared Kushner is the Antichrist. April. Okay, well, he's going to have to trace his lineage back, which he might be able to do. Okay, because I got into this before, the whole thing about the Antichrist question. Everybody was saying Obama was the Antichrist for years and years and years. He's the Antichrist. I'm like, how is that possible? Because if for the Jews to accept him as their coming awaited Messiah, which would be prerequisite to the whole temple being built and him being given permission to go into the temple at the abomination of desolation, at the midpoint of the tribulation, to defile it, to proclaim himself God, they would have to be convinced that he had that messianic bloodline there where he could trace his lineage back to King David. Did a whole, it's like a 10 or 11, 12-part teaching on this. Just an Antichrist at contendingfortruth.com. Maybe he could pull that off. But remember, when the Antichrist comes, he's going to come, I really also believe, with a very, very big religious bent to him. And he's going to most likely come with all signs and lying wonders and miracles. I don't think it's just going to be something where it's some obscure son-in-law of Trump that all of a sudden rises to preeminence and all of a sudden starts doing miracles and wonders. I think he's going to come on the scene like that. I don't think it's just going to be, well, he was some little insignificant guy, and now look at him, look, he's the Antichrist, okay? I'll say this, though, he'd have a better shot from a acceptance standpoint of the Jews of becoming the Antichrist as regarding to their awaited Messiah than Obama ever would. They would never accept Obama. Obama could not trace his lineage back like that. They're not going to accept him because of his, and I don't say this to be prejudiced, but because of his skin color alone. Him being half black and half white. They're not going to accept him. I've done whole teachings on this. See, there's a lot of biblical parameters that people totally ignore when it comes to people saying, oh, he's going to be the Antichrist. Oh, really? Have you looked at what the parameters are for being the Antichrist? There's a lot of things you got to fulfill in the Bible. Old Testament, in order for the Jews to accept you alone, not to mention the other religions of the world. So that's what I got into in that teaching.
They have changed that to Citigroup because Citigroup has most of the building. But here is a young man that's about to be a part of the administration, the Trump administration.
Okay, here is a literal picture. It's 2 minutes in exactly, and it is showing the front of this building, and it has, I guess it is polished aluminum, but it almost looks brass. 666, 666, and then I'm sure it's 666 on the other side. There's 3 666s. It's jutting out from the building in big numbers. I mean, they look to be 1.5 feet tall, each 6. And they're not trying to hide it.
And he owns a building with 666. And the FRID chip is being developed in this building. We know that's going to be the mark of the beast, folks. There's no question about it. We know that's part of the beast system that's being set up. Jared Kushner is a Jew, without question is connected to Zionism, along with Donald Trump. Ivanka is now a converted Jew.
And she's also converted to his religion, and we're going to talk about that later, because it's just one thing to say you're a converted Jew. It's another thing to say what sect of Judaism religiously are you practicing. That's very important here. We're gonna learn more about that, I believe, in the next clip or the one after that.
All the Trump sons are married to Jewish women, and his daughter,
Well, obviously his youngest son isn't.
Tiffany, is dating a Jewish man. Isn't it? I mean, do you think this is all a coincidence, people? Can you see how, like the scripture says, they call themselves Jews, but they're not? They are the synagogue of Satan. They are not Jews. So we are seeing the development of this mark of the beast right before our eyes being developed in a building that is marked 666.
And in this building houses Lucid Technologies, the tech company rumored to be behind the anti-Messiah RFID chip. Antichrist is really what.
I mean, I'm sure it's good real estate property as far as making a profit and as far as an investment.
So lucent, if you look at the word lucent, giving off light, shining, translucent or clear, Lucifer is the light bearer. Okay? So that's basically what his name means. So this is where they derive the word Lucent Technologies.
But who in their right mind is going to buy a building with that address? Unless
Here they're showing Lucent's logo. The snake eating its own tail.
More sinister behind it all.
Make the things that make communications work.
Jared Kushner is now inside his company headquarters with his parents for their regular Tuesday business meeting.
So this is some type of news report. He's saying he's in there with his parents for his regular meeting.
Just like the Trumps, this is very much a family affair. It's all about loyalty and sticking together.
Tonight, Jared Kushner's appointment as a senior advisor to the president is also drawing controversy because he's married to Trump's daughter, Ivanka. Transition team officials say they do not believe anti-nepotism laws apply to presidential advisors. Kushner is pledging to take no salary and give up his management roles at his own family's billion-dollar real estate empire and the newspaper he owns. His lawyer tells CNN.
So he's really given up supposedly a whole bunch of stuff. Even saying he's worked for no salary in order to get this position in the Trump administration.
He'll also sell off a significant number of his assets, including this flagship building in Manhattan, to his brother or to a family trust.
And it's literally the 666 building. They're showing the 666 as they're saying this, and this is a CNN feed. I mean, and the caption here is, this is one of the headquarters, if not the headquarters, of the Alcatel Lucent Corporation, who has set up the worldwide network for reading the RFID implant, as well as developing or producing the RFID implant, as well as developing the chip itself. The brother of Jared Kushner, Joshua Kushner, is the key. He was the one that I believe he transferred the ownership to in order so that there wouldn't be any conflict of interest with him being this presidential, his role as presidential advisor and the role he's in now.
Controlled by his mother, including this flagship building in Manhattan, to his brother, or to a family trust controlled by his mother, to his brother, or to a family trust.
So they're saying that over again.
Controlled by his mother.
The family members will still benefit from the decisions he makes in the White House. And on the other end of this is what happens when he leaves government office. Are they then going to give him his interests back? It's not really divesting himself of this. It's not separating himself from his financial interests.
Ethics watchdogs question whether he can fully cut himself off from having a financial stake in government decisions.
Hi, I'm Lena Rao. We're here at the Rock Health CEO Summit at the Wharton School.
So this is Joshua Kushner she's interviewing. He is an IT entrepreneur. This is Jared Kushner's brother, who he transferred the 666 building into his name. Okay, he's an IT entrepreneur. He has started a business in healthcare as well. One being a company called Thrive/Honor, which does convalescent home care for the elderly, with people like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's patients who are already being microchipped. The other is a health insurance company offered via Obamacare called Oscar.
In San Francisco, and I'm joined by Josh Kushner, founder of Thrive Capital and also founder of Oscar, a really, really exciting insurance startup that we're going to be talking about a little bit. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm so interested on why you actually founded an insurance company, because it's definitely not the norm for the startup world of the Instagrams and Facebooks and Twitters.
Sure, yeah. My background, as you just said, is primarily investing in consumer internet-oriented businesses. The reason why Kevin, Mario, and I started a health insurance company is primarily because I had this experience where I opened my health insurance bill one day and realized that I had absolutely no idea what it meant.
So the caption here is, "This is a lie. He started this company as a front man, set up by his crooked ex-con father, who along with the other elite Rothschilds controls Donald Trump." And again, we look at the last video. That's kind of hard to argue. That's why I put the information that I'm presenting to you in the order that I've presented it to you today. So there, he's saying Josh and Jared are merely front men for the Kabbalist agenda, and they're making a pretty good case for this.
I'm educated, and I run a growing business.
So that's all I'm going to play on that particular clip. Now, let's go even further with this. Okay, so now we've really gotten some unbelievably disconcerting, troubling news. Let's go further. This is entitled Enemies Within the Trump Administration. Now remember, Mossad is the Institute for Intelligence and Special Operations and is the national intelligence agency of Israel. And they're connected with a lot of really, really bad covert stuff. Okay? And they're saying Jared Kushner is basically a Mossad agent. Now, let's go ahead and play this. And here you're going to hear Ted Broer, who I don't agree with everything Ted Broer says, but man, some of the stuff he's got out there, the guy is brilliant, and he also kind of leans toward this new age bent. He said some things that, like we live in holographic whatever and stuff like that I do not agree with, but I tell you, the guy does his homework, and he is brilliant in regard to a lot of things. This is a Dave Hodges Ted Broer interview that just recently happened, and man, is there some bombshell stuff in this particular interview.
He straight called out Jared Kushner, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes.
That's Ted Broer.
The first person that broke that story on Kushner in his involvement with George Soros, and yes, I said that correctly, with a $256 million loan with a huge development that they put together, cadre.
So Jared Kushner has taken a $250 million loan from George Soros. So now you see a gigantic connection between Kushner and George Soros. We already presented the link between George Soros and Trump. the link between the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and Trump. I mean, this is really looking really seriously super bad.
So, we've got a lot of people swimming in the swimming pool with Trump that are really kind of like great white sharks that are looking for a meal, and Trump really can't get out of the pool because he's in the middle of this mess with these guys. And so I think he's treading water trying to stay alive in the.
And again, I don't know. I mean, after all I've already heard in this particular study, I really don't know if I buy that. I really don't know if I buy the whole giving Trump a pass and he's just trying to tread water and he's innocent in all this and he just made bad cabinet choices and he doesn't know what he's doing. Come on. Really? After all that we've already heard about his affiliations with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers going all the way back into like the 80s, how he's got all of his sons, married into probably Kabbalist Jewish type of bloodlines, and how Ivanka's married to this Jared Kushner, who is a Kabbalist. He's going to talk about what literal sect of Judaism is. I mean, I don't know, man. It's becoming increasingly harder for me to think Trump is innocent in all of this, and that he might be he might be going along with what he's being told to do, but somewhat of a mastermind of it as well. I mean, he can't be. How could he be that stupid? How could he be that naive? Because that's the only other alternative.
Middle of this mess, because I don't think he knew he was going to win the presidency. I believe that with all my heart. Hillary already had fireworks scheduled for the night of the election. She canceled those when all the information was released on all the soul cooking parties and all the other stuff that Podesta and those guys were involved with. And I believe that all of our prayers were answered, and that Hillary Clinton was not allowed to go into the White House.
And I agree with that. I do agree with that. But again, just like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers financed both sides of World War II, and how they will typically finance in one way, shape, or form both sides of almost every major war, because they're making money, because they're getting human sacrifices from the war machine, and they view those as human sacrifices to Lucifer. Was Trump Plan B? That's all I'm saying. It's increasingly looking like that is the case.
The problem is Trump has over 20 CFR members in the White House and in the cabinets and in his positions that he's appointed. Over 20 more CFR members than Barack Obama had.
Okay, how could that be by accident? Council on Foreign Relations, we already talked about that in the previous video. Well, Trump's golly gee whiz, he just didn't know. He didn't know. He just pointed all these CFR members who were basically like working for Lucifer's agenda. And he didn't know. It was just, man, I just messed up. I'm sorry. Come on. Really?
Now, if you aren't familiar with the CFR, it's the Council on Foreign Relations. It was originally started right after World War I with the League of Nations, tied directly into the Balfour Declaration, tied directly into the Treaty of Versailles, tied directly into Woodrow Wilson and the globalists wanting to run the planet for the sake of the planet. In other words, the top people running the planet kind of like a corporation and running it as a business. And these are the people that Trump has put back into the White House in greater numbers than Barack Obama did, and into his administration, into his cabinets. And it's something that just needs to be avoided. We don't need any CFR members. And Chuck Baldwin pointed this out in one of the articles that he had written about why it never seems to get any different in the White House because of the appointment of CFR members. And of course, we also have the Federalist Society.
And Chuck Baldwin got kicked off of, I believe he said, News with Views. That was a part of the interview I'm not even playing. I'm trying to keep this as short as I can. But yeah, Chuck Baldwin gets kicked off because he starts saying anything against Trump. What? Really? Even though it can be verified and vetted? No. No. You're either with Trump or you're against him. And I really do think this is going to. I think that a lot of this is pride. People will say they will stick with Trump now no matter what happens, just from the standpoint they will not be able to admit they've been duped. Am I glad Trump's in there as opposed to Hillary? Absolutely. 100%. We would probably already have all alternative media already gone had Hillary been in. That was one of her first orders of business, and she said it. Okay? So I'm not saying that I wanted Hillary in there. I'm never going to say that. But I just have this really bad feeling that the people in the know, the people that are actually putting out the truth now about Trump, are going to be ultra demonized and ultra scrutinized, and now we're more isolated than ever. Whereas opposed to when we were all on the Trump train together, there was so many of us, it was hard to, but now the same people, the majority of the people on the Trump train are going to turn against us and say, oh no, no, you're wrong. What, you want all those kids gassed in Syria? What kind of monster are you? They're just looking at whatever the lamestream media, prostitute media lies are that they're presented. So now all of a sudden we can trust CNN, I guess, as long as Trump's in office and as long as Trump is for it. No, no, no. Never. Never do that. Lest Satan get an advantage of you, for we are not ignorant of his devices. So, I was hoping I wasn't going to have to do this broadcast, but it's becoming more and more painfully obvious to me what's going on here. I think you're seeing the big picture here. And unfortunately, you know, this seems to be the case.
That was started by Newt Gingrich back in the 90s, which really helped to point a lot of judges into key positions, like these guys that are being put into positions right now that are continuing going against Trump and his executive orders. And Trump has found that he basically is in a situation where he is now beginning to realize, like Bill Clinton said when he was asked about the UFOs and disclosure, he said that he realized that there was a government inside the government of which he didn't control. He said that in a news conference. Dave remembers it, and so do I.
I do remember.
Yep, and what's interesting about this is Trump now realizes that too. After Roswell and the OSS became the CIA, we had a deep state developed because of the Exchange Stability Fund that was funded through the Treasury being taken over by the Rothschild banking cartel in 1934. You can do the research on that. There's a little series of videos you can watch on the Exchange Stability Fund that goes into detail on all of this stuff. All of these things are being orchestrated by this satanic crime cabal family. They're known as Sabbatean Kabbalists. They basically worship Lucifer, and they're trying to bring him out of the pit and resurrect him back out of the pit and make the planet as bad as they possibly can to resurrect the race of Satan out of the pit to rule.
So this would be literally, as the Bible refers to, in the book of Revelation, they call themselves Jews, but they are the synagogue of Satan. Okay, the Sabbatean Kabbalists, this sect of Judaism that goes by the Kabbalah and the Talmud. I mean, the Talmud, I just can't Talmud in the keyword search box at contendingfortruth.com. I mean, it says such blasphemous things about Jesus Christ that I cannot repeat them on air. I don't even want it to come out of my lips. They're so bad, what it says. They hate Jesus Christ so much. I don't know any other religion on the planet that hates it more than a Kabbalist that's going by the Talmud. I don't know of any religion on the planet that hates Jesus Christ more. This is who we're in reference to here when we're reference to Jared Kushner and the people that he is associated with and the people that control him.
Planet. And you think I'm kidding? I'm not. These Kabbalists practice this stuff, and they basically worship these fallen angels and these entities. And the sad part about this is Kushner is a member of the Shabbat sect of Judaism that teach the Kabbalah. Now, I'm not saying that he's Kabbalist.
Let me ask you, Ted, how does Shabbat compare to the, shall we say, the mainstream of Judaism?
It's a sect. Let me give you some cliff notes on it. I'm glad you asked me, Dave, because I pulled up some stuff here. And what's the thing about it is, let me just tell you, this is an article from Macau, who's a Jewish fellow. I've interviewed Macau before on the Hagma show. Really nice guy. And he basically says the Shabbat people are like the extreme sect of Judaism that believe that they're the only people that really are going to get saved are the Jews. That's what he believes. And then they believe that very, very strongly. And the problem is they work with Israeli intelligence, according to Henry Macau, in criminal and intelligence operations. And they promote a supremacist ideology. They encourage Zionists to do whatever they want to do. It was founded in the 18th.
And they would view anyone outside of that sect, especially anyone outside the Jewish race, as goyim, which is kind of like how a Muslim would view a non-believer in Israel as an infidel. And I know there's a better term for that in Islam, but basically like subhuman cattle that need to be either enslaved or killed off. That is what their religious tenets would would teach at the highest levels of whether it's the most radical elements of the Kabbalah, the Sabbatean Kabbalism, this sect of Judaism, or Islam. Okay, it all ends up going back to that, and that gives them the justification to kill off, masses and masses of people without really any conscience about what they're doing, or manipulate them, or destroy them, or sicken them, or whatever they're doing to a given population.
Century Russia, Shabbat is a branch of Hasidic Judaism, a form of Orthodox Judaism that promotes Jewish mysticism as a path to the Enlightenment, including the study of the Kabbalah.
Which is just extremely high-level witchcraft.
So this is who these guys are. They've been known to work with Mossad for years and years and years, and they have tremendous amount of influence all across the globe. In fact, one article, let me read you this from, this is, they have a, this, I'm reading directly from Henry McCow's website. He says, Shabbat is a criminal organization with ties to Mossad. Shabbat provides safe houses and storefronts for Israeli intelligence and criminal activity, which includes everything from terrorism to money laundering to drug running and to prostitution, which ties directly into the mafia, the Vatican, and the CIA. We all know this from the one book, Operation Gladio. And for instance, in March of 1989, U.S. law enforcement rounded up a criminal network in Seattle, Los Angeles, New Jersey, Colombia, and Israel that involved Shabbat House, that was involved in money laundering and currency violation. Wayne Madsen, a reporter, writes that in Bangkok itself, Israeli military pilots and drivers who stay at the Shabbat House, they're trained Thai Army commandos, divers, and pilots who are fighting a Muslim secessionist movement along the southern border with Malaysia. The Bangkok police have long suspected this place is a center for the Israeli mafia and drugs. And now this goes on, you go to the website, you can read all this stuff. And now Henry McCow is a brilliant, brilliant man. I've had him on before. I've questioned a lot of the things that he said. First, you can do the same thing, and you can go ahead and vet all of these statistics yourself. Now, I'm not saying that Judaism is bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that all Jews are involved in this. It's simply not the truth. Most Jews have no idea what's even going on with the one world government or the Rothschilds or anything else. They're just trying to earn a living, trying to be good citizens, trying to do what they need to do. It's just a sect of these guys, these 17 Kabbalists that were basically brought together from the Druidic worship. And we could do a whole background all the way back to Genesis chapter 6 if you'd like, Dave. But what happened is they ended up getting together again in the 16th century with a guy named the same as Sabbatain Zevi, who said that he was the Jewish Messiah, and he was a practicing of this, and he was a Satanist, and he later converted to Muslimism, became a Muslim. And then about 100 years later, Jacob Frank said he was the resurrected, the reincarnated, Sabbatain Zevi, and he basically brought this whole sect back up into power again. And they worked with the hidden societies and the people, they call them the Illuminati back in the 1700s when they actually, we knew they existed then. Now they have other names. And he basically worked with these guys to bring in the Rothschild family, which is the banking cartel, and which are also Luciferians. And so all these guys are...
See how this is all interconnected? I mean, out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses a thing is established. We've heard different viewpoints from totally different people that are unrelated today, and they're all basically saying the same stuff, or they're pointing us all in the same direction. And I wish I had better news to present to you today regarding the subject with Trump, with Kushner, with this potential World War III scenario, but man, it's not looking good. I wish I could present you more positive information, but boy, oh boy, this is hard to overcome, this level of confirmation.
Working together to overthrow the world and bring in a one-world Luciferian government, which is what the Bible says is going to happen. So any of us who think this is not what's supposed to happen, this is what the Bible says is going to happen.
So if that were the case, if they're working together to overthrow the current old world order and bring us into the new world order, they're working to bring us out of the age of Pisces into the dawning of the age of Aquarius, as the one famous song says, which is what their goal is. They know that it's most likely going to have to go through Syria and Israel. There's biblical prophecies about Damascus being destroyed, and it's already half destroyed, but you could relate that to this particular subject as well. And they know if they could kick off World War III through Syria, and it looks like there's a very good chance of that happening, then they can bring about Lucifer's plan.
Going to happen, and this is what Donald Trump is finding himself fighting against. But now here's his brother, his son-in-law, who's in the Shabbat, in this sect, that studies the Kabbalah, and he's in bed with George Soros with a $256 million investment.
And Ivanka has converted to this same religion he's in.
With Cadre, for development, and Jared Kushner himself, and you guys can look this up, the Kushner Foundation gave $342,000 to Shabbat. Period. This is what's crazy about all this.
Let me be clear on this. Shabbat is satanic.
No, it's a sect of Judaism that's ultra-Orthodox Jews. I'm not even saying that everybody is Shabbat.
Okay, all right, so you're going to stop short of that.
I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say Shabbat is a sect of Judaism.
It sure sounds satanic to me. It's a extreme fringe of Hasidic Judaism that believes in world domination and that they're superior and they're the only ones going to heaven, and they're yoked up with the Rothschilds and the Kabbalah. And I mean, come on. Yeah, that's satanic. He's not going that far. I will go that far. And guaranteed, if Kushner is part of this, he's not some low-level lackey in the group like a second-degree Freemason that doesn't really know what's going on in the 30th, 32nd, 33rd degrees. Come on. He's not. He's at the top of the food chain.
That works with the Mossad, who believes in the supremacy of Zionism. They believe in that. And they believe in they basically believe in the supremacy of the Jews, and which a lot of Orthodox Jews. That's not Shabbat. That's a lot of them feel the same way. But the Kushner Foundation had gave $342,000 to Shabbat, and that's basically their synagogue they go to. In fact, this is another article from Judy Maltz, and she said it may seem odd for a modern Orthodox Jewish family to build a Shabbat synagogue, but Ivana Trump and her husband Jared Kushner are already quite invested in the ultra-Orthodox outreach movement, or to be more precise, their parents are. And remember, Jared Kushner's father was put in prison for fraud. We know all that. And they're a huge developer. And you can read this article. It's from Kushner Foundation gives $342,000 to Shabbat by Judy Maltz, M-A-L-T-Z. And you can read it. It's not being negative about it, but it's just what they did. And I remember I started talking to a friend of mine who's a TV evangelist, and I told him about the information that I had, which is it's got multiple sources on all of this stuff. And he basically told me it was fake news. And I'm like, it's fake news that these guys are Shabbat? And he goes, yes. I said, okay. Why did they give the money to the foundation? He goes, I don't know. It's all fake news. It's all a lie. I said,
So see, he's a trumpet, the guy he's in reference to. It doesn't matter what you show him. Because Trump was God's man, and therefore, no matter what Trump does, it's of God now. No, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, that maketh flesh his arm, whose heart departed from the Lord. If Trump is not producing good fruit, we're to always look at the fruit of people. Okay, what type of fruit are they producing? Trump is starting to produce some really, really rotten fruit overtly. Okay, and I'm sorry, but he is. And this is why, you just don't blindly follow people and blindly put your faith in that, because that will always turn out typically to be a disaster.
Fake news.
Ted, let me weigh in on this, because here's how I look at this. I'm less concerned about the extremism of a religion until it manifests in action.
That's right.
And I don't have this information, but as you said, if it links into the Mossad is as dirty, if not more so, than the CIA. And, of course, I'm going to get here come the emails, you're anti-Semitic. No, I just know my history. And
that's why I've prefaced so many things today to make you understand that I'm not anti-Semitic. Okay, we're going to be looking at that after this, okay? I am against the synagogue of Satan. And the synagogue of Satan is what essentially controls Israel. And to a large part controls the upper levels of the Illuminati, who answer directly to Satan. Okay, so that's not my fault. That's a fact. Okay, but I'm not going to blame all the Jews on their actions. So it's important, I believe, to separate that. And again, we're going to take a quick biblical look at this in a second when this is all done.
Jewish people are no more the Netanyahu government than we were the Obama government.
That's right.
And when God says the Jews are the chosen people, I accept that as a matter of doctrine. But there's a difference.
Okay, now, here's the thing, though. The Jews, the chosen people, what does that mean? Does that mean that all Jews go to heaven and you don't have to whatever? is that now, if you think, and I'll just do this now, if you think God is done with the Jews, just read Romans 11. Okay? Just read Romans 11. It says right there, he is not done with the Jews. He is, and he cautions Christians that are saved to boast against them. He cautions them, lest you also be cut off like they were, lest you also be blinded like they were, because they rejected their Messiah when he came the first time. This is very easy to figure out biblically what's going on here. So we don't boast against them. We don't glory that the Jews are blinded in part until the fullness of the Gentile come in. We don't, no. You don't do that at all. Okay, that's a very bad thing to do. But the Bible also says in Galatians 3:26 through 29, it says, "For ye are all children of God by faith in Christ Jesus." All children of God. Black, white, green, whatever. I'm not green because that would imply you're an alien. Okay, humans are all children of God by faith in Jesus Christ. Saved Christians. Okay, no matter what your race or ethnicity type of thing. For as many of you has been baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Christ Jesus. And if ye be Christ's, then ye are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Abraham was basically the father of the Jews, the Jewish races. That's where it started. Okay, so if ye be Christ, if you're a saved Christian, you're Abraham's seed. That's how God views you. Like we're grafted in, like the Bible talks about in Romans 11, that we are grafted in. In fact, I probably should read that so you can understand kind of what I'm talking about here. Okay, so let me just say this now. Romans 11:14. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them, meaning the Jews, which are my flesh, and might save some of them, meaning this is Paul talking about his own race. He might provoke them to almost jealousy, that some of them might be saved and have their eyes open, because at this point the blindness in part had been happening to the Jews. Okay, and the emphasis was moving more to the Gentiles. Why? Because the Jews had rejected their Savior, Jesus Christ. Okay, so then it says, for if the casting away of them, meaning the Jewish race in general, not all of them, but if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, meaning the world meaning the Gentiles, we're reconciled to Christ. Okay, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches. And if some of the branches be broken off, now they're talking about the Jews now that have been blinded and have rejected Christ. If some of the branches be broken off, those are the branches, okay, that rejected Christ. And thou, being a wild olive tree, this is a Gentile, this is a non-Jew, we're a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, meaning you grafted in. You know how you can graft trees together? Well, we are the wild olive tree. A Gentile who is saved is a wild olive tree grafted in to the original olive tree. That's the analogy being used here, okay? Okay, so if some of the branches be broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree, were grafted among them, and with them partakest of the root and fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches. Meaning we do not boast against the branches that were broken off. The Jews that have been blinded, the Jews that rejected Jesus Christ. And that's the time period he's writing in, because they were literally living at that time period he wrote this. The original Jews that had originally rejected Jesus Christ, essentially at the cross, and even before that. Boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. Thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. That's horrible to say that. Meaning, you'd say to God, oh, you broke off, you blinded the Jews so I would get saved, God. That's what he's, no. You do not say that, okay? Don't even think that. Next verse, verse 20. Well, because of unbelief, they were broken off. They had no faith. They had no faith that he was the awaited Savior, their awaited Messiah. They begged for them to give them Barabbas, the murderer, and crucify Jesus. And then they said, let Jesus' blood be upon us and our children, which literally cursed them to this day, their lineage to a certain extent. Not to say no Jews can get saved, but blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentile come in. This is when the thing started moving over to the emphasis on the Gentiles. I mean, who are the majority of people in the world today that are saved? Gentiles. Okay? There hasn't been a mass awakening of the Jews yet, but there will be in the tribulation. When they're brought through the fire, as silver is tried through the fire, as the book of Zechariah says, and 1/3 of them will go through the fire, 2/3 of them will die, but 1/3 of them will go through the fire, and they'll have their eyes open, and they're going to look upon the one they pierced, meaning Jesus Christ, and mourn for him as one that mourns for their only begotten son. That's when they're collectively, that 1/3 will get their eyes opened. It's not going to happen to the tribulation, near the end of the tribulation. According to the Word of God, I've done many, many studies on this. Okay, so then it goes on to say, for if God spared not the natural branches, meaning the Jews, remember, the Bible says he came to his own and his own received him not. Jesus Christ came to his own. He came as a Jew, okay, and his own received him not. Collectively, they rejected him. Obviously, like the apostles and Mary and his, these types of people didn't reject him, okay, but collectively the Jewish race did. So, for if God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not thee. Meaning, you do not boast against them. Just because those branches were broken off in unbelief, you don't boast against that. You don't take pride in that. Like, oh, I'm so special. God saved me, he didn't save these Jews. No. Behold, therefore, the goodness and the severity of God on them which fell severity, meaning the Jews that rejected him, but toward thee goodness, if thou continue in his goodness. Otherwise, thou shalt also be cut off. Well, I thought that you just had to pray that one prayer a long time ago, and when I was a little kid, and I can just go live like the devil. And that's not what the Bible says. Does that mean we earn our way to heaven? No, but there is fruit that should follow salvation, conversion. And the Bible does say, they that endure to the end, the same shall be saved. Enter in at the straight gate. Narrow is the way to life eternal, and few there be that find it. Continue thou in well-doing. There's all these Bible verses that say, you strive and you continue and you keep going. You don't give up on God, in other words. But it says, otherwise thou shalt also be cut off. That doesn't sound good to me. And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in. Meaning, if the Jews who had rejected Jesus at the time all of a sudden changed their mind and accepted Christ, they shall be grafted in to the natural tree. For God is able to graft them in again, meaning he would give them another chance. For if thou were cut off of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted in contrary to nature into the good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, meaning the Jews, meaning that he came to his own and his own received him not, be grafted in under their own olive tree? For I would not, brethren, I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, lest, in other words, lest pride fill you, that Blindness in part. In part. That doesn't mean that, what that means is that Jews can be saved, but it's only going to be probably a very small part, and that's basically what we see. Blindness in part is happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. And I believe we're nearing that point very quickly. And then it says, and so all Israel shall be saved. The 1/3 that is left, the 2/3 will be killed, but the 1/3 that is left, that is brought through the fire as silver is tried in a furnace, that is going to be all of the Israel that's left. And that is the part when it says all Israel shall be saved. And then all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. And for this is my covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sins. As concerning the gospel, they are enemies for your sake. So currently, the normal Jew who, let's say, has a horrible opinion of Jesus Christ, which would be kind of normal, as concerning the gospel, they're enemies for your sakes. But as touching the election of the saints, they are beloved for the Father's sake. This is why you don't boast against them. Okay? For the gifts and callings of God are without repentance. For as in times past have not believed in God, yet now have obtained mercy through their unbelief. Even so these also now not believe, that through your mercy they may obtain mercy. For God hath concluded them all in unbelief, that he might have mercy upon us all. Oh, the depth and the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments and his ways past finding out. So anyway, hopefully that explains that to you, so I can clarify that point. All right, let's go back to the audio at this point.
Between Jewish people and their government. And Netanyahu is a criminal. He's under investigation for criminal behavior on multiple fronts. And I mentioned this the other day, and here come the anti-Semitic comments, and I'm tired of it. AIPAC lobbies our Congress, and we're worried about the Russians and phony charges of election tampering. What AIPAC is doing is illegal. It is illegal for foreign entities to lobby our government. Do we have laws or don't we? And if it wasn't a Jewish-based organization, everybody else would be screaming from the rafters. And I'm concerned with Israel because Israel, first of all, number one, I'll say this. We should defend Israel. I have absolutely no qualms with that. I support that, and I always have. But I want to make sure that Israel is not going to go out and engage in Syria and get us involved in a war with Russia that's not necessary. And that's my big concern. And where I come to be concerned with Kushner, I could care less if he's Jewish or Muslim or Chinese and a Buddhist. I could care less. What really bothers me about him, Ted, and let me make this last point, and I'll have you comment, is his association with George Soros.
Me too, buddy.
That's where I want him gone. I want him gone because he's a Soros ally, not because he's Jewish.
That's right. No, Dave, you're 100% right. I feel the exact same way. If it wasn't for his relationship with Soros, I wouldn't have brought the rest of this up. But though I do find it interesting that Shabazz been linked to Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, and he's a part of that. Now, I'm not going to go any further than that.
So you think he could be a spy? Could he be a spy, Ted?
Dave, who knows? I mean, these guys go so deep undercover. Who knows who in the world? These are, all I know is this. He has the president's ear. He's the right-hand man of the president of the United States, and his wife Ivanka now is getting a White House office. I mean, what did Kushner say the other day? He said that he wanted the United States, I'm paraphrasing this, to be run like a corporation, for the benefit of the stockholders, et cetera. But, of course, the corporation we're not part of the shareholders on this corporation. And so this is, in fact, if you listen to the show I did with Chuck Baldwin on Wednesday of last week on my archives, you can go to healthmasters.com and you can pull up the archives on the show last week with me and Chuck Baldwin. He's on for the first half an hour. He breaks all of this stuff down on this. And it's only him, me, you, and Sheila now that have really talked about any of this stuff. Because here's the thing, guys. I don't care if Trump's son-in-law is Jewish. I could care less. It's like Dave said. I don't care whatever he is. I'm just pointing out the Shabbat thing because of the tie to the Mossad. I'm also tying it to the because of the Kabbalah. because of what that stuff teaches. That's some messed up stuff. And I'm also tying it together because of Soros. I mean, the most important thing here is that tie-in with George Soros. Why in the world did Cadre Development borrow $256 million from George Soros and part of Jared Kushner's thing? I mean,
he's not even getting into all the other stuff I've already covered regarding the 666 building and the Lucid Technologies being in there, and the ties in with the implantable microchip, and then Trump's ties with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers going way back into the 80s. He's not even getting into that. You start putting all this stuff together, and again, it just looks really, really bad.
You might not realize that's a problem, and that tells you how corrupt the mainstream media is, Dave. They haven't reported on any of this stuff because George Soros is their man. George Soros is their man. And remember this, too, now. Now he's brought Gottlieb in to head of the FDA. Now, I thought he was against Big Pharma, Trump was, when he was doing the whole thing beforehand. He was talking about how he was against the Big Pharma, against all these drugs, against all of this stuff. Now he brings in this guy named Gottlieb. Let me tell you about Gottlieb. Gottlieb is an interesting character. Dr. Scott loves Gottlieb. He's basically promising to rescue himself from to recuse himself from more than 20 companies he is involved with as far as promoting their pharmaceutical products if he becomes the head of the Food and Drug Administration. Really? Really? Gottlieb made the promise after his relationship with pharmaceutical corporations became a concern to those who opposed his nomination to the FDA. In a letter, the ethics head of the Department of Health and Human Services, Gottlieb promised to recuse himself from the companies. He's also a physician who...
So here's yet one more appointment Trump's made that is beyond red flags, beyond evil. And at what point do we finally say, no, Trump knows exactly what he's doing. He's doing this on purpose. He may be being guided by the satanic minions that control him. And maybe you could even say deep down he doesn't want this for the country, but he may not, you know, it may be, again, payback for, you know, going way, way back into the 80s with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. He may be in a position where, you know, they may have all kind of compromising information on him that they say, you know, which is typical for high-level politics. They say, you don't follow the game plan here, this will come out and you will be gone as the president. So either way, it's horrible, and it's just one more horrific appointment that Trump's making.
Was the deputy commissioner of the FDA from 2005 to 2007 under Bush. We know how corrupt Bush was. He currently sits on the board of several small biopharma companies and advises GlaxoSmithKline, the sixth largest pharmaceutical company in the world. Gottlieb also works for venture capital fund New Enterprise Associates and is the managing director of the investment banking firm T.R. Winston & Company. And he has earned millions of dollars as an executive and in speaking fees and consulting fees from the pharmaceutical industry. Here we go again, the revolving door of the FDA, and now he wants to streamline the drug approval process to allow his companies that he represents to get their drugs to market much more quickly. Guys, listen to me. We've got enough drugs. We got way too many drugs. We've got statin drugs that are out there poisoning people, causing liver damage, causing heart disease, causing hardening of the arteries, causing kidney failure, causing your brain to go to mush. We've got that going on already now. We've got diabetes drugs like metformin that cause pancreatic cancer, one of the side effects of that little gem. We've got all of these drugs that can be done from a natural standpoint. Almost every single case, natural approaches can correct all of these conditions without the use of drugs. If you go to my website, you can read about all of that with all the stuff that I've written and the stuff that we've researched. But guys, we don't need more drugs streamlined. We've already got natural cancer treatment cures that we saw with Katie. Katie, your ex-co-host, Dave, she worked with that doctor in Colorado and didn't do any chemotherapy or any radiation and was completely cured of breast cancer. I mean, there's natural ways to treat all of this stuff without the use of drugs, without the use of chemotherapy, without the use of radiation, without the use of all of this stuff. Same thing with high blood pressure. It's easy to correct. Same thing with high cholesterol. It's easy to correct by changing your diet and lifestyle choices. But they don't want you to do that. They want you to get you an expensive pharmaceutical drug and push the drugs, push the drugs, and push the drugs. And here's the guy from the FDA.
Which cause more side effects, which makes you take more drugs and gums up your liver, and ultimately you become a surgical candidate. And that's the whole key, keep you all locked in. And then the vaccines set you up for that as well, because they sicken you and they cause all kind of things in the body to happen. And now with the foreign DNA in the vaccines and things of this nature, it's literally affecting your DNA, and it's corrupting your DNA. And I'm going to do a study here. I've been trying to get to it. I got so much new information on the vaccines. I mean, it is so sinister and evil and dark regarding the vaccine agenda. I mean, it is just beyond comprehension at this point. And I really am trying to get to that study, but with so much breaking information on a weekly basis or every 2 weeks, it's been tough to get to everything. But I hope to get to that in the near future.
He didn't pick somebody like Dr. Mercola or me or somebody else who could go in there and say, hey, wait a minute, we're not going to go ahead and continue with these drugs and promoting all these drugs. He picked an FDA drug insider from all of these different corporations to put in the nomination for the head of the FDA. Dave, it's ridiculous. He's got all of these CFR guys in there. Now he wants to put this guy in there. I mean, he must not think it's a swamp. He must think it's a hot tub, and they're all bathing together. I mean, this is a mess. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, but again, if it's a hot tub that they're all bathing together, that means they're all buddies. That means that he knows exactly what he's doing. But yet, collectively, the people that have voted for Trump and got him into office, and the people that have supported him have given him all of these free passes along the way. And when he has messed up and it's come out where they're like, well, he didn't know or this or that. I am getting to the point where I do not believe that anymore. I think he knows exactly what he's doing at this point, and it seems as though he's doing everything he can do to sabotage the country.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I have grave concerns from Pence on down. Doug and I talked about Madison the first hour.
Yep.
And his ridiculous comment regarding Muslims. I don't know what to think at this point. I think Trump is surrounded, overwhelmed, and I think he's trying to make deals to get through and survive. I don't think he was insincere when he ran for president. I believe what he said. I believe he still stands for it. I think he's done some good things, but his choices of who he's putting around him couldn't be worse.
No, they couldn't be worse. I mean, these are all globalists, CFR guys. He's running this thing as if, he wants to bring us into the New World Order as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say that kind of sums up, and I hate to say it, this whole teaching today. He's running this like he's wanting to bring us into the New World Order as quickly as possible. Obamacare didn't get fixed. That just got, they kicked the can or whatever down the road. Is anything really going to get fixed? I wonder. We plunge into war, World War III, all these other issues, these platforms that he ran on. Oh, that's out the door. We're probably under martial law. All this other stuff is superfluous. It's not even part of the campaign strategy anymore because it's like life or death now. So, again, I wish I had better news, but unfortunately, I don't. Now, let's go ahead and round this out. And I know I'm way over time on this part, but this is where I'm going to just end after these. So, it's no coincidence Pentagon attacks Syria after Bannon's removal from the National Security Council. It's no accident that the Pentagon launched an unprecedented airstrike against Damascus hours after President Donald Trump removed the White House chief strategist Steve Bannon from the National Security Council. Cornell Clayton, director of the Thomas S. Foley Institute of Public Policy and Public Service at Washington State University, asserted this. He said, quote, I suspect that Bannon's anxiousness about being on the council, in the Principals Committee in particular, was to shape the messaging of U.S. foreign policy towards a more nationalistic perspective, meaning we don't stick our nose in everybody else's business. Clayton noted, saying this trend has most likely been reversed after the reshuffle. For instance, we see the strike yesterday in Syria, that something Bannon would have been very much opposed to, and yet he's out literally the day before it happens. I don't think it is a coincidence that Bannon was removed, and you see that kind of internationalist policy decision being made right after he was removed. And now Kushner's in. Satan incarnate, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, who we've already looked at in depth. The National Security Council reshuffle, which took place Wednesday, also saw General Joseph Dunford, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Dan Coates, National Director of Intelligence, being reinstated to the Principals Committee, while Homeland Security Advisor Tom Barsart was demoted. And it just seems like all of this reshuffling, all of these people being purged from Trump's cabinet is always moving in the wrong direction. The people that they're putting in there are always much worse than the people they're replacing. And that was, I mean, was it all by design before all of this happened? I don't know. Was it that Trump got in office and he had good intentions and he tried to put some people in that, you know, he thought were good, and then he got pressure from the, quote, powers that be to say, no, they got to go? I don't know. But it's sure not looking good. Sure looking real bad. Here's another thing that I haven't even mentioned. Update. North Korea options include nukes in the South and Kim Jong-il assassination. The National Security Council, which is now the one that Bannon got kicked off and Kushner's in, has presented President Donald Trump with the options to respond to North Korea's nuclear program, including putting the American nukes in South Korea and or killing dictator Kim Jong-un. Multiple top-ranking intelligence and military officials told NBC News. Both scenarios are part of the accelerated review of North Korea's policy prepared in advance of Trump's meeting with President Xi Jinping this week. The White House hopes the Chinese will do more to influence Pyongyang through its diplomacy and enhance solutions, but if that fails and North Korea continues its development of nuclear weapons, there are other options on the table that would significantly alter U.S. policy. Now here's an update to that. A U.S. Navy strike group will be moving toward the western Pacific Ocean near the Korean Peninsula as a show of force. A U.S. official told Reuters on Saturday, that was just yesterday, as concerns grow about North Korea advancing weapons program. The destroyers and the cruisers that are being sent are equipped with the Aegis missile defense systems that can shoot down ballistic missiles like North Korea has been testing. So we got North Korea scenario ramping up. I covered that in depth in the last teaching I did. We've obviously got the situation in Syria. We've got more people that seem to be good people being purged out of Trump's administration, or purged out of key positions. We've got Jared Kushner, which seems to be like Damon Omen 2, you know, Satan incarnate, now being moved into more and more higher level roles, particularly regarding the Middle East and what's all going on there with and now with the National Security Council. And now, I mean, man, everything in the Trump administration that I can see right now is moving in the wrong direction, is moving in a very, very ominous, satanic direction. I hope I've made the case for that properly today. I hope I've presented enough of a case for that. I don't really know what more. I could come out next week and maybe have a whole new battery of information confirming what we're talking about today. But I think you've probably heard enough to at least get you praying about this and potentially educating other people. I said this before regarding Trump. I'm not going to give the guy a free pass. He gets in office, he starts doing evil stuff. He starts making horrible decisions. I'm going to call him out on it, and I'm doing it. And so this is the situation we find ourselves in. And like I said, the whole thing about turning America around and this and that, you know, I just don't see a lot of Bible for it. I don't see a lot of Bible for us going into some kind of golden age where, you know, I see the Antichrist and false prophet arise. I see World War III. From a biblical standpoint, that's what I'm seeing on the horizon. And now this is much more starting to look like that scenario we're looking at. I hope I'm wrong. I think we should pray about it. If you feel so led, fast about it. Educate other people about it. If you haven't made your, if you want to, like, let's say you're thinking about buttoning up your preps, now would be a good time to do it. If you have bug out locations, things of this nature, it may be something that you want to really try to put the finishing touches on a lot of your preparations for things that could potentially be coming. You know, that's what a watchman does, is they're here to warn, and that's what I'm here to do. And I'm telling you what I'm seeing, and it's not just me saying it. It's a lot of other experts regarding this particular subject are saying pretty much the same stuff. So I'll go ahead and close this out in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this day and this time you've given us, Lord. I do thank you for letting us come together again, God, and to explore these things. I pray that we would take this information to heart, Lord. And a lot of people, I believe, are going to be, I think a lot of people, Lord, are going to be shattered by this information and these revelations regarding Trump. But, Lord, you said in your word not to put your trust in man, and that you look at the fruit of a tree, Lord. And that's what I attempted to do today. And I wish I had better information to report, Lord. But, I mean, if I'm wrong, show me, Lord. But the information seems to be absolutely overwhelming regarding this particular subject. And I know in your word you always preserve a remnant, Lord. And I just pray that you bless your remnant, that you bless the innocent, that you deliver the Christians, Lord, that are being persecuted worldwide, especially in Syria, Lord, and elsewhere where they're being persecuted, and especially with these new policies, Lord. If Assad's taken out, God, how the Christians will be persecuted there. I just pray to God for your divine intervention, Lord. I pray to God for your divine intervention, for their protection. I pray you bless the remnant. I pray to God you give us wisdom, Lord God, knowledge and understanding of these current events, and that we would do exactly what you would have us do, that we would act exactly as you would have us act, that you would make a way where there seems to be no way, that you would open the doors no man can shut and shut the doors no man can open, that would be very, very obvious to your remnant what we should do, and that you would use us mightily, God, for your glory, and that through us you would lead many people to the Lord Jesus Christ. I pray you forgive us for any and all sins we have committed, as we forgive those who have sinned against us, and that the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart would be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer, and that you cleanse us from presumptuous sins and secret faults, that they would not have dominion over us, and that we would hear the voice of the Holy Spirit clearly, Lord, and that the voice of another we would not follow. And we ask all these things in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.